Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Braintree Town Council meeting for Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. Can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can you please remain standing and join me in a moment of silence for our men and women in uniform? Thank you. Please be seated. Could we have the roll call, please?
Councilor Barica?
Here.
Councilor Flaherty?
Here.
Councilor Hume?
Here.
Councilor Maglio?
Here.
Councilor Moran?
Here.
Councilor Quilty?
Here.
Councilor Reynolds?
Here.
Councilor Ringus?
Here.
Councilor Ryan?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is announcements. Do we have any announcements from any councilors? Councilor Barica?
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. I have two announcements this evening. The first is a reminder. We had the Braintree High School student producers here at our last meeting, and the high school musical, the Theater Guild, is having their show, The Unsinkable Molly Brown. The shows are going to be this Friday at 7 p.m., this coming Saturday, November 22nd at 2 p.m. and at 7 p.m., and November 24th at 2 p.m. They're all going to be, all the shows are going to be at the high school. This is a great opportunity to support our students and to support the arts in Braintree. They do a phenomenal job. So I hope if you have the time and the inclination and want a little entertainment this weekend, you will stop by and check out The Unsinkable Molly Brown at Braintree High School. The next announcement I have, Mr. President, is on behalf of the town clerk, Jim Casey, and I wanted to read this from the town clerk. I am overwhelmed by the support, well wishes, and thoughtful messages received from those in our community these past weeks. I am healing well, receiving the best of care from my wife, Carol, and 4 daughters. My goal is to return to the office by the beginning of the new year. To those who extended assistance to my staff, especially during the presidential election, I thank you. And my work family, I know some of them are in the audience tonight, I added that part, Debbie, Jane, Eric, and Sue Semino, you all rose to the occasion during the biggest election of a lifetime and made me proud of your can-do approach in getting the job done. I am blessed to have you at my side each and every day. To all, may your Thanksgiving be bountiful with reasons to be grateful. And certainly, we extend our well wishes to the town clerk as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Council Maglio?
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. The East Braintree Community Action Coalition is having their meeting this week. They meet on the 3rd Thursday of the month at the Braintree Yacht Club on Gordon Road. The meetings are at 6:30, and the agenda has all kinds of great stuff on it. You can check their page, my page, and everyone is welcome to join, whether you live in East Braintree or not.
Thank you. Do we have any other announcements from the council? Okay, our next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We don't have any minutes to approve. The next item, if no one opposes, I'd like to take an item out of order under new business to be referred to the Committee on Personnel Issues, Order 24058, Council President, appointment of Deborah J. Starr as interim town clerk, or take up any action related thereto. So does any councilor object to same night action on Order 24058?
I object.
Okay, so we're not going to take same night action on this, so we will be referring that to the Personnel Committee. Do we have a motion to refer that to the Personnel Committee?
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. That's been referred to the Personnel Committee. All right, the next item on the agenda is old business 24034 Braintree Property Associates Limited Partnership, SSP 131 Lakeside LLC, SSP 135 Lakeside LLC, Section 135, 612 zoning map and zoning ordinance text amendment, creation of a PUD district known as Mixed Use Planning Unit Development District, or take up any action related thereto. This requires a public hearing. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved, Mr. President.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. So now we have the public hearing is open. I'd like to refer to Councilor Ringus, Chairman of the Committee on Ordinance Rules, for the recommendation on Order 24034.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Ordinance and Rules did have 3 meetings on this matter. We met twice last week and once just prior to the council meeting tonight. We did vote tonight with 3 persons in favor, 2 opposed, for a favorable recommendation to the full council on Order 24034. I'm sure it'll come up in discussions, but the proposal that was moved forward did have an amendment made by Councilor Morin as to some of the hotel language, and we'll get into that, I think, a little bit later.
Thank you, Councilor Ringus. So we're going to have multiple presentations this evening on this. We're going to hear from the petitioner, Jim Dunlop, and the attorney, Frank Marinelli. We're going to hear from the planning board recommendation from Director Santucci Rossi. We're going to hear from Simon Properties, and we're going to hear from Carl Seidman. I hope I pronounced that right. Research affiliate and consultant from Financial Peer Review. So I'm going to ask first if we can have the presentation from the petitioner, Jim Dunlop, and attorney, Frank Marinelli.
Good evening, President Ryan, members of the council. For the record, my name is Frank Marinelli. My office is located at 439 Washington Street, Braintree. I'm a lifelong resident of Braintree and land use attorney with my business located in Braintree for over 40 years. I'm pleased to represent Zom Living this evening, a premier residential developer who has built nearly 30,000 high-quality apartment homes nationwide, approximately $5 billion in development. With me is Jim Dunlop. Jim is the managing director of Zom, and also here is Patrick Bench of Benchmark Strategies. Tim Fox, as the president alluded to, is here from Simon. Tim is the director of development, and Clay Hallman is here from Simon as well. Clay is the director of research for Simon. Simon, owner of the South Shore Plaza, is Braintree's largest taxpayer. And per the master plan of Braintree, South Shore Plaza is a critical town asset and a transformation area. Zom is proposing to build 325 needed residences on an unused back parking lot at South Shore Plaza, a $140 million transformation at an ideal mixed-use location. The Planning Board's unanimous favorable recommendation states at page 12 that MUPUD aids in satisfying the master plan strategies, and the MUPUD complies with all of the purposes of the town's PUD ordinance, which is section 612. And it creates $140 million of economic development and housing through the PUD at an underutilized site, which is the 7 acres involved. At page 14 of the Planning Board's favorable unanimous recommendation, it states, the planning staff is in a position to recommend that this MUPUD zoning move forward. The town and state's policies on development and housing are clear. If people are not spending money and creating new real estate growth in Braintree, our financial base isn't growing either. The trends in new retail centers and transitioning older centers all provide for residential uses. The live-work model is alive and thriving in Massachusetts, and it's time for Braintree, using their existing retail stock, land, and excess infrastructure for something more productive. The days of empty parking lots, excess asphalt, open space with no public use or recreating benefit need to end, end quote. It could not be clearer. South Shore Plaza is a critical asset, and it's a critical perfect location for the $140 million investment in housing and economic development. As we see with nearby Hanover Crossing, Legacy Place, University Avenue, Natick Mall, Kingston Collection, and others nationwide. Quality housing brings consumers, employees, new businesses, and is a catalyst for economic development. Over the past 5 years, other communities created housing and economic development using PUD and overlay, well-known zoning processes. Despite its superior location, Braintree did nothing to create economic development. The numbers show stagnation. No new growth, no new revenue, culminating in an $18 million deficit, reputational harm, that our town was not open to quality development, teacher layoffs, and the need for an $8 million override. The June override paid by us taxpayers addresses less than one-half of the deficit. The town auditor had warned over 2 years ago on May 31, 2022, that Braintree was on an unsustainable path and needed new growth, like housing, to generate new revenue and keep up with almost $170 million in expenses each year. Not much was done. Now, with a new administration, a new era, and new policy, Braintree has a new chance to move forward. And that's what the vast majority of Braintree residents want, including at South Shore Plaza: restore our town's financial health, build a brighter, smarter future for Braintree with needed housing and economic development on 7 unutilized acres at South Shore Plaza, the town's commercial center. We need to work together and move forward with this detailed mixed-use overlay opportunity that is recommended. In addition to the unanimous recommendation of the Planning Board, secondly, the MUPUD text was reviewed on behalf of the town with revisions by the town lawyers, KP Law, and is recommended to you in its text. Thirdly, the MUPUD was reviewed and supported by the planning director's professional evaluation. Fourthly, after 2 public hearings last week and another one this evening, the MUPUD received the favorable recommendation of the Ordinance and Rules Subcommittee. Fifthly, the independent economic review of the MUPUD development was performed on behalf of the town by Carl Seidman, former professor of urban studies and planning at MIT. Mr. Seidman is here and will report his findings to the council. His research, his interviews, and report significantly validate the key economic findings of the residents' economic report that was submitted with the application. That, number one, approximately $2.3 million in pre-construction permit money to Braintree. And secondly, an average of $500,000 net taxes after expenses each year, a range of net of $400,000 to $600,000 per Mr. Seidman's independent evaluation. The council's adoption of this ordinance text creates the opportunity for the applicant to proceed to the special permit hearing process and seek a special permit for the $140 million development in keeping with the concept plan. If a development special permit is not granted, the existing zoning continues to apply. South Shore Plaza is Braintree's largest taxpayer, as stated, and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th largest taxpayers listed by the Patriot Ledger on June 24th are apartment complexes developed within the last 20 years. So when you bring those 2 land uses together, retail and compact residential, you create the $140 million economic engine and a live, work, play lifestyle environment that is being sought and is being built nationwide. So why not here in Braintree? The 10.3-acre venue at South Shore Plaza is ideal, proximate to highway, adjacent to the dam, a water amenity, adjacent to a 1.6 million square foot shopping center, the region's largest, with dining and retail, close to commercial and places for new businesses, and close to Blue Hill Reservation. It is a uniquely desirable location to live, work, and recreate. Jim Dunlop, managing director of ZOM, has worked in good faith and been a welcome presence in our community for the past 2.5 years. Jim and our team enthusiastically embrace community outreach and engagement. And you can see that, if I can just approach Mr. President, we have a book of over 30 letters of support, emails, things that have been received in the record. It also outlines the 9 community meetings that we've had and the outreach that we've done. Thank you. We developed a comprehensive website to keep Braintree residents well informed, featuring an extensive FAQ section. Our website attracted over 3,300 unique visitors. Since late June, we organized and held 9 well-publicized meet and greet community meetings, including 2 at the proposed site, 2 at Farmers Market, 2 at Braintree American Legion, 1 at the Watson East Braintree, another at Highlands Playground, to ensure maximum resident participation for everyone to have a chance to learn and have dialogue about what we were doing. Anyone that wanted to learn about the project certainly had ample opportunity in the meetings and outreach that we performed. We flyered neighborhoods, we posted meeting details on Braintree Facebook pages, and we sent direct invitations through the Braintree Advertiser to 16,300 households. That is impressive and substantial outreach. Over the past year, we informed, engaged, accurately answered all resident questions. Everything you could want to learn about the proposed $140 million residences at South Shore was available and remains easily accessible at the residences at southshore.com, our website. The residents of South Shore have more letters of support, communications of support, than any zoning development that's been proposed. And that's, you can look at the book, but we don't have any zoning proposals that have had the support and the well-reasoned content of those letters of support. The residences at South Shore have a spectacular setting just north of the former dam with balconies looking out towards the water amenity. They will have over 39% open space. The requirement in highway business is 25%. We have over 39% open space. We have beautifully designed apartments in a single building with balconies and water views, interior and exterior resort-style amenities, internal ramp parking design. So all the parking is in the core of the building on each of the 4 floors. Fitness center, walking trail, pool, abundant landscaping, and great synergy with the existing shopping center. There will not be any resident vehicle access to or from Laurie's Way, to or from the residences at South Shore. Any other narrative is a false narrative. Laurie's Way, which has been sealed off to and from South Shore Plaza for decades, will remain sealed off, and the separation will be substantially augmented. A thick, dense, high 13-foot berm with green giant arborvitae on top will be installed. That is shown on our filed plans, and it's documented at page 7 of our application, which was filed with the council on June 21st. Excuse me. The ZOM residences are on South Shore Plaza. Excuse me, property. Almost 2 football fields away from the closest single-family home. The ZOM residences are on South Shore Plaza property, almost 2 football fields away from the closest single-family home. There is no legal lakeside abutter within 300 feet, which is the general abutter to abutter standard that's used in the law under Chapter 40A. We are not in a neighborhood. We are separated from it by distance, by a high berm, by a thick vegetative buffer. The building is 4 stories, which is an allowed height in highway business zone. The roof height is approximately 9.5 feet lower than the roof of Nordstrom and Target. At page 9 of the Planning Board favorable recommendation, it is noted that multifamily residential transforms the property, eliminates heat islands, and introduces thoughtful modern buildings. Quote, the concept plan demonstrates that substantial grading and landscape buffers have been thoughtfully placed, improved upon, planned, positioned, designed, and integrated as part of the PUD to soften and adequately protect the transition. Compare the extraordinary transformation to the existing conditions. The existing conditions are surplus asphalt and an empty former 99 restaurant building. As described in the Planning Board's report at page 2, the area is best described as underutilized parking lot. And at page 9, quote, the character of this area is significantly lacking with very little appeal of any type. The parking area is surplus and very rarely used. The dwellings, the two houses owned by the South Shore Plaza, are secluded and not in an appealing sense, and this area has become attractive to homeless people setting up camps, end quote. Compare that again to a vibrant, beautifully landscaped, high-quality residential community, a $140 million development direly needed by our town. I represented Hanover Crossing, and after the 300 residences were approved at Hanover Crossing with its consumer and employee base, Market Basket, other restaurants, and retail came, a nearby example of how housing is a catalyst to further investment and improvement. We respectfully submit the additional considerations relevant to your review, which is, again, the Section 617 text, which has been vetted and reviewed by the attorneys for the town. That was the first step. The Planning Board recommendation, the unanimous recommendation of the Planning Board, was the first step in the process. And after public hearings on August 13th and October 8th, that text was approved and the concept plan was approved, and the compliance with PUD was noted. If you look at pages 3 and 4 of the Planning Board recommendation, it talks about the 5 components and the 5 purposes of PUD, why PUD is appropriate. It talks about, number 1, allow for greater variety and flexibility in the development of housing types. That requirement and purpose is met. Secondly, make housing units available to moderate income residents who might otherwise have difficulty finding homes within the town. We have 10% affordable. That requirement is met. Number 3, promote the permanent preservation of open space. We have 39%, over 39% open space, where the requirement in highway business is 25%. That requirement is met. Number 4, facilitate the construction and maintenance of streets, utilities, public services in a more economical and efficient manner. We take care of all our roads. We do our own snow plowing. Take care of our drives. Repair and maintenance is performed privately by the development. That requirement is met. Number 5 in the Planning Board recommendation, promote retail and service uses closely related to the residential sections of the PUD in a manner which blends all land uses into an aesthetically complementary whole. That requirement is certainly met. We're right next to the largest regional shopping center, 1.6 million square feet of shopping and dining, and our lobby is almost directly adjacent to the vacant 99 building, where we hope there will be synergy with a restaurant or other use with residential, which Tim Fox will speak to in terms of some of the interest. Secondly, the vote tonight and the subcommittee vote is really the second step of the 3-step process, and we have been transparent at every step of the process. We have been available to work with anyone to talk about any aspect of the development. The PUD Text 617 was drafted significantly by the planning director and reviewed with the town solicitor, KP Law, and that is the second step, that text that you have before you. After approval by the town council, section 617, if it is approved with its concept plan, would then go to the planning board for the special permit process. And that is the third step, where we would take the concept plan and create the special permit plans that are necessary, grading, utilities, et cetera, stormwater, all of which goes to the planning board for the special permit public hearing process. That's the third step. As stated at page 3 of the favorable planning board report, the applicant will undertake and/or fund any required study, analysis, and upgrades to the town's infrastructure to this development program. And that is true. And if the planning board does not issue a special permit for a development in the PUD, the existing zoning, albeit archaic and unworkable, remains in place. And that is stated in the law at section 612G, which states, quote, in a PUD overlay district, all of the zoning requirements of the underlying zoning district shall apply unless and until a special permit for PUD has been issued by the planning board, end quote. That's in our ordinance. It's been there for about 30 years. So there's no risk. That's the first protection. The first protection is that no development approval by special permit, no change in the underlying application of the underlying zoning. And PUD zoning has yet a second protection that wholesale rezoning doesn't have. PUD requires a concept plan. Some of the rezoning, that's generic rezoning. When you go from Residence B to Residence C, as we've seen, when you go from Residence B to general business, as we've seen, there's no concept plan, there's no protection like there is with PUD. PUD is tied to the concept plan. And the ordinance states the concept plans for the property must be submitted to the town meeting, now town council, for approval prior to submission to the SPGA, the planning board. And that's everything that we've done. So the second protection means that when we go to the planning board, the next evolution, the engineered plans, must be in keeping with the concept plan. And that is the revision to section 617C that was made by KP Law. It's in all of the publicly filed documents, that to state that the planning board, quote, may grant a special permit for development within the MUPUD, and in so doing must find that the application as submitted is in keeping with the concept plan as approved and most recently amended. So those are the protections of PUD. It is a superior zoning tool. The planning board must find that the special permit application and the engineered plans are in keeping with the concept plan. So Tom commits to you, as we have throughout the process. Number one, a maximum of 325 residences. That's what's shown on the concept plan. 10% of which are affordable for those earning up to 80% of average median income. Secondly, a maximum height of 4 stories. Thirdly, over 30% open space, which is significantly more than required in highway business. Fourthly, no resident vehicular access to or from the development to or from Lakeside. And fifth, the requirement of a 13 high-foot berm, screening and buffer as shown on the concept plan. Third, for your consideration, Mr. Seidman is here. He's going to talk about his report of October 7th, but basically, as we stated, it does confirm the $2.3 million in anticipated pre-construction permit and connection fees directly to the town, and secondly, an average of about $500,000 each year net to the town after expenses. The superiority of the PUD mechanism is also quoted in the Planning Board staff report at page 16, and the Planning Board staff report says this, quote, unlike a typical rezone application where no concept plan has been provided, the BZO section 612C3 states that the concept plan for the property must be submitted to town meeting, now town council, for approval prior to submission of the SPGA. We've done that. The point of the concept plan, the recommendation continues, is to, quote, demonstrate on a plan view what the use and dimensional table of the PUD would translate into visually. It's a great tool as it is often difficult to visualize text. Both of those tables regulate the use, type, and placement of buildings within the PUD. It goes beyond a typical rezone where anything in the zoning district would be permissible once rezoned, end quote. So you can see the protections of PUD, which is what we have before us. Just on Mr. Simon's report, which he will talk about, he does state at page 5 that the estimate by ZOM of 28 school-aged children is reasonable and well supported by data. There are no 3-bedroom units at the residences of South Shore. And by the way, Braintree school enrollment is down approximately 10% since 2019, pre-COVID, from 5,842 to 5,237, a drop of about 600 students. And the closest school, Flaherty Elementary, is down 25% from 2009 pre-COVID, from 376 to 281. The Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, indicated in its 2017 study that the state has entered into a period of long-term decline in school-age population, and that MAPC found no relationship between housing production rates and enrollment growth rates for the 234 districts that were studied. The residents at South Shore don't cause a school-age issue. Conversely, ZOM looks forward to working constructively with the town, together with the school department during the special permit and development construction processes. As I stated, ZOM also pays for its own trash disposal, repairs, maintenance, snow plowing. Compact development like this is less stress on municipal services than the same number of disparately located homes. And new tax and fee revenue is just the beginning. When you have new consumers and new employees living at the residences, they will patronize existing businesses, they'll bring new businesses to Braintree, an immense economic benefit. Adding quality housing, people living at large retail is the catalyst to further improvement. And we see it all around us: Hanover Crossing, Legacy Place, University Avenue, Marketplace, Linfield, Natick Mall, Chestnut Hill Shops, and on. Financially speaking, Braintree would need 20 or more developments in the pipeline to eclipse the $140 million investment that you have before you this evening. The fact is, Braintree doesn't have $10, $14 million developments, or $27 million developments, or $4 million developments in the pipeline, or $10 million developments to equal the 140 that this presents to our town. And there is unlikely to be such a pipeline of projects with increased construction costs and interest rates. A letter of support from Braintree Electric Light Department dated August 12th, that's number 22 in your book, speaks to, quote, a significant decline in commercial and industrial business, with Bell's sales to the sector dropping by 25%. Can you believe that? And it goes on to say, this is a symptom of the lack of growth in Braintree. There it is, in black and white, in plain numbers. And they say businesses leave and are not replaced, period, end quote. That's a financial fact that needs to change in a positive direction, right? Our town doesn't have the luxury to ignore robust economic development. We can't function on continued overrides, increased taxes, depreciated municipal services. That's not what residents expect. It's well beyond time to move ahead with new growth, new revenue, necessary housing, and a $140 million investment. Sometimes we hear, well, what's the need for quality apartments? The need is clear. Couldn't be clearer. First, the demand is driven by the exorbitant cost of a home purchase. The master plan itself, page 13, places the median home sale in Braintree at $615,250, and that was 4 years ago. To buy such a home requires a substantial down payment that many young workers do not have. And then there's the overwhelming mortgage, 80% financing, interest rates 2 to 3 times what they were just a few years ago, increasing from 2.65 to 6 to 7%. Secondly, many people are not interested in the burdens, time, and expense of home ownership. Many younger workers have good jobs, many earning over $100,000, and are renters by choice, paying market rate at hopefully the residences of South Shore, Marina Bay, Quarry Hills, Lenox Farms, and others. They want quality apartments with indoor and outdoor amenities like ZOMs. Thirdly, the other demographic of apartment renters by choice is empty nesters. They've sold a home, they want to move into an amenity-rich apartment community. Somebody sells a home in Braintree and wants to stay in Braintree. There are limited options and none with the amenities and the surroundings and the environment that ZOM offers. Our master plan talks about creating multi-generational housing, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Whether it's your daughter, your mother, you, whatever generation, multi-generational housing. The Urban Land Institute and Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies indicate that single-person households, empty nesters, couples without children make up the new majority of American households. Married couples without children remain the most common type of household. Married couples with children, households, are not a majority household in America. So the need for quality, high-quality apartments is clear. In addition to 90% of the residences that are market rate, 10% of the residences are reserved for those earning not more than 80% of the average median income. And that's the affordable that the PUD purposes talk about. Those residents can include teachers, nurses, government employees, other hardworking people. And the Harvard Joint Center for Housing report talks about multifamily rental housing playing an increasingly important role in workforce housing, providing homes for our nation's teachers, firefighters, police officers, healthcare workers, and public employees. These vital workers contribute to the community. Qualifying for the 10% affordable will include workers earning up to 80% of the average median income. Next, the town's master plan. The town's master plan is required by General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81D, which calls for housing and economic development. It calls for Braintree to produce housing and economic development. The master plan statute is townwide. It's not a standard of a master plan for one property for the plaza. There's no such single property master plan edict. The statute requires Braintree to provide local housing opportunities for all citizens, and Braintree to provide economic development strategies for expansion or stabilization of the local economic base. That is what we're trying to do. Creating needed housing and economic development on over 7 acres of asphalt wasteland at South Shore Plaza is good policy and in our town's best interest. It's time to move Braintree forward, and we should be working together, hopefully unanimously, to do so, to come together and to move forward together on a development that we direly need in terms of housing, in terms of economic development. South Shore Plaza is not a blank canvas. It's real estate and investment is market-driven. It is incremental and it evolves. It's a built-out plant. As I said, it's not a blank canvas. Quality housing is a proven catalyst for further improvement. Simon is doing that by adding housing with one of the nation's preeminent housing developers. The master plan, page 20, calls South Shore Plaza, quote, one of the town's key economic assets, end quote. And it certainly is. Why would we not want to empower it? This is what's being done at large brick and mortar retail, adding housing for future further economic development and improvement. It's shown, it's proven. South Shore Plaza is Braintree's commercial center since 1961, 63 years. Other developments, commercial and single-family residential, have sprung up and been built around it. South Shore Plaza will remain a staple 100-plus acre economic engine for Braintree, but it needs collaboration to evolve. Why would we ever deny that to the largest taxpayer, to the company that is dealing with a grade A residential developer with the need for housing and economic development that's been stated everywhere, from the state to every municipality? The South Shore Plaza is 1.6 million square feet of shopping and dining. It's 3 times the size of Hanover Crossing. Hanover Crossing is 543,000 square feet, and they have 300 units. We're not asking for 3 times the number of units of Hanover Crossing, even though we're 3 times the retail. We're right in the same range of 325 units. And the density is appropriate, and it's consistent with other developments in Braintree. Jonathan's Landing is 318 residences. Lenox Farms is 338 residences. There are various Braintree residential developments with greater density per acre. Wind Properties is over 37 units per acre. 84 Pearl Street, French Ave is over 34 units per acre. So it is reasonable. The density is reasonable. Simon is a publicly held, highly experienced global real estate leader. During a recession in 2009, we all know that Simon invested tens of millions of dollars adding Nordstrom and Target to South Shore Plaza. They've been a good community partner. They have developed, they have invested. They will continue to do that. South Shore has great location and no debt. It is profitable. As the region's largest shopping center, it involves many leases and property rights that determine its path forward. And what is before you tonight, adding quality residential, is the path forward. It's a model that's been implemented, as we've said, by Simon and other industry leaders nationwide. There's no other project, in conclusion, that moves the needle, creating economic development, creating quiet upscale residences, people earning $100,000 or more, paying on average $3,000 per month. They're located on South Shore Plaza property, 2 football fields away from the closest single-family lakeside home and separated from Laurie's Way by a high, dense berm with green giant arborvitaes. Braintree needs to work with this $140 million unique opportunity, planned unit development, where Zom will own and develop 7 acres and construct 325 upscale residences, and Simon will own 3.3 acres and repurpose the 16,000 square foot building that was formerly the 99 restaurant. We respectfully request the council's adoption of the mixed-use planned unit district overlay that has been recommended, and the concept plan, which after requested council approval would enable us to proceed to engineered plans and to seek a special permit from the planning board to make the $140 million investment in housing and economic development a reality. Jim Dunlop of ZOM, with the president and council's permission, will now present the concept plans required for the PUD and the residences, and then we'll hear from, if it's permissible, Tim Fox and Clay Hallman from Simon as to the importance of approving quality residential at large retail as a catalyst to further investment and improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marinelli. Mr. Dunlop?
Evening, Jim Dunlop, Managing Director for Zom Living. What I want to talk about for a few minutes, Frank really covered all the facts on the development. I want to just go through qualitatively why Zom is here and what our concept plan is. Why Zom is here is really a multifamily development really is driven by two overarching concepts or entities. One is the resident. Who is the resident? Where do they want to be? And what are they all about? And 2 is the location. What does the location offer or bring to the table? And Zom has kind of top of industry reputation for design and development. We don't cookie cutter developments. We look for unique opportunities that produce unique assets that our residents and the residents of the submarket are really interested in. That resident, in this case, we did a market study to see who that resident is single, young couple, empty nester, as Frank discussed. They are professionals. They are young couples focused on their careers. Their focus is not owning a home. Their focus is not doing maintenance all weekend. Their focus is their lifestyle and their career. They're looking for a location and a home that is maintenance-free and is close to two things. One, their job is good a commute as they can get. And two is lifestyle. In this case, the mall and the commercial district. So what attracted us to this is the commercial district and the resident South Shore, Boston metro area. And I say South Shore, Braintree being kind of the northern point of high-quality South Shore market with the access, the highway, the train, the commuter, the T, that most communities don't have. And that is very attractive to our resident and therefore to us. If you see this commercial district, a big part of it is the mall. That's lifestyle, that's restaurants, that's retail. But it's also, you know, it's Granite Street, it's Forbes Road, it's Wood Road, it's access to hotels, other restaurants, and the highway. So the site is on the south side of the mall. Access to it, just to go through site plan, architecture, and landscape. This is the mall road leading from Granite. This is 86% of the traffic to the property is coming through the mall road from Granite. And the PUD gives us the opportunity for a new retail arrival to this new district of the mall, call it, and a refreshing of this whole area in landscape, in tenancy of the retail that Simon will do, but also the residential, orienting the access and the activity of the residential building towards the new retail and towards the mall. Transit, there's a bus stop here, as a lot of you probably know, that gets to the T in about 10 minutes. That's very attractive to our residents as well. Arrival court here is the first. It's a pull-in, get off the mall road, some surface parking for the office and the leasing tenancy. But then down the mall road a little more, the back of house access to parking and loading. And as Frank said, the unusual part about this multifamily is the fact that it shields, hides, conceals the parking deck. It'll be a 4-story parking deck, same as the residential, so that people can park on their floor and just go in. The property will offer indoor and outdoor amenities, amenities centered around the lobby and an internal courtyard for outdoor amenities, but also some open air courtyards across the back. And one of the bigger amenities that residents look for actually is open space, which was another attractive piece to this. To be able to create green space and walking trails on the reservoir side and orient the residents' experience towards that green space and towards the reservoir is very unusual and will be highly desirable. The landscape is really the soft design that makes the site and the building, for that matter. We'll talk about the architecture, but the landscape architecture is the qualitative overlay of the architecture that really makes the property inviting. The opportunity is along the Mall Road to add walkways to walk to the mall, but landscape against the building and landscape between the sidewalk and the Mall Road, all the way around. The biggest opportunity here is adding a walking, biking trail in the back between the building and the reservoir, with access to the building from that side for residents as well. And one feature that Frank mentioned is the east side of the property where it meets the lakeside circle, Laurie's Way, creating a berm in a landscape buffer that you can see the berm through the trees here, 13 foot high, with evergreens planted up it, but especially on top of it, including what's depicted here would be giant arborvitae that would stay evergreen throughout the year. Architecture-wise, we felt like a contemporary style was not appropriate, and but a traditional style was not appropriate either. This is more of a transitional style. It has some brownstone shapes to it that break up the elevation of the building, and the use of brick as well as cementitious panels to give a variety to the materials. More of a transitional style, but you really want to have a variety. So this is a rendering of the bike path on the back side of the building, a different feel to it. Still cementitious siding, but a different shape, and a different shape to the architecture, and a little indication of what the feel will be of the landscaping. The reservoir being off to the right in the back of that tree line. And finally, architecturally, we feel like the setting at the reservoir is ideal and will be very comfortable and will be appropriate for Braintree and for the site, and people will feel not an intrusion, but a comfort with the building as it sits in its environment. And we can talk about any aspect of that you want in questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, we're going to have the Planning Board recommendations from Director Melissa Santucci Rossi.
Did you want to hear from Simon, from Tim and Clay, or?
We'll get the Planning Board, then we'll have
Okay.
Simon, all right?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. I've given several presentations on this matter over the last several years, and looking to just kind of do a reduced presentation this evening, Mr. President. I can answer any questions that I don't cover. Thank you. Just procedurally, I do want to note that the planning board's required under Massachusetts general laws to provide a recommendation. The application was filed with the town clerk, transmitted to the planning board. The planning board did all public noticing required to abutters and also in the newspaper. We conducted an initial public hearing on October 13th, continued to December 10th with no testimony, and then the planning board held a final hearing on October 8th, which at that time they closed the hearing and issued a favorable recommendation. Part of that process included the use of peer consultants. You've heard Mr. Seidman is here this evening and will likely follow me with his summary of the peer review that he completed of the applicant's fiscal analysis. We know where this is. We're at the South Shore Plaza. We're on a 10.32 acre site. We're looking to rezone portions of land that are currently zoned Residence B and also highway business to a PUD overlay district known as the MUPUD. Some of the highlights, Mr. President, members of the council, from the staff report, and one of the most important sections is the purpose. So we need to make sure that the overlay that is proposed, the zoning language that is proposed, and the concept plan all meets the purpose of our ordinance in PUD section. The MUPUD provides for a multifamily housing, a use that is currently allowed by highway business by special permit at a lower density. A portion of the land is Residence B, which is not a district that is generally compatible with a highway business zoning district, aside from some of the special permit uses. The town has demonstrated flexibility in the past regarding development of multifamily housing on a case-by-case basis. So this gives us an opportunity to have something a little bit earlier than the development stage, so we can understand the zoning and understand the full picture prior to the submission of a special permit application. The MUPUD provides 10% of the multifamily units available to households earning at or below 80% of AMI. The commitment in the PUD zoning will aid the town in maintaining minimum subsidized housing percentages. The PUD would allow an affordability level to be set at 10% of the total unit count. This percentage is consistent with a lot of inclusionary bylaws and also our most recently submitted MBTA 40A Section 3A guidelines. The goal, as we all know, is to increase the affordable housing stock, not to financially burden a project to a point of infeasibility. The MUPUD Table 2 dimensional and density requirements lists the minimum open space percentage at 30. You heard testimony earlier this evening that the underlying zoning is a 25% minimum requirement. So we're exceeding our open space, noting that their concept plan shows, in fact, closer to 40%. Given the riverfront requirements and the plan revisions that will occur during the special permit process, the Planning Board and Conservation Commission may require conservation restrictions on portion of the open space and will undoubtedly promote the permanent preservation of that area. The MUPUD concept as proposed does not include any new streets or public infrastructure. It's important to note that all the utilities, access, and infrastructure will result in no maintenance requirements to the town. The MUPUD is proposed on a separate 10.32 acre site that will be carved out of the 120 acre site that is the South Shore Plaza. Carving out this site for the MUPUD provides an opportunity for the South Shore Plaza to partner with a residential developer whose expertise is the construction and operation of multifamily developments. The MUPUD allows for similar uses that exist at the South Shore Plaza, and this is the first step and can be viewed as a catalyst in transforming the property while still maintaining the current asset until such time allows for further transformation. You'll hear more about that from Simon this evening. This part of the PUD purpose is clearly met. PUD ordinance goes on to talk about minimum standards, and when reviewing this ordinance and concept plan, we need to make sure that those line up and meet those minimum standards. Again, it meets the minimum land size exceeding 3 acres. We have the concept plan that was been submitted and reviewed, and we do have the combination of 2 uses, which the PUD ordinance requires. The MUPUD as proposed meets the minimum frontage requirements along Lakeside Drive, noting that no access to any portion of the MUPUD will be off Lakeside Drive. As proposed, the public open space will likely have pedestrian and bike access off a multi-use path from Lakeside Drive or internal to the social plaza. Subject to the special permit process, Lakeside Drive could serve as a secondary means of access for life and fire safety vehicles and apparatus. The next section that I'm going to cover in the report is noting that the MUPUD as proposed aids in satisfying several strategies in the master plan. One of the most important things, and that we note, is that the social plaza is listed as number 2 under our transformation areas. The social plaza is one of the town's key economic assets and represents opportunities for development. That's why we're here talking about that this evening. I'm sure everyone's read this. I will very quickly cover these sections, Mr. President. The first section is Core Theme 1, noting that this satisfies Goal 1 and also Strategy 1B, and folks can follow along in any of the multiple reports that have been issued. Core Theme number 2, we're hitting on Goal number 2 and Strategy 2A and 2E. Under Core Theme number 3, which is Safe and Connected Transportation Network, we're hitting Goal 3 and Strategy 3C. Core Theme 4, Residential Neighborhoods and Housing Options, we're hitting Goal 2, Strategy 2A, Goal 3, Strategy 3A, Goal 4, and Strategy 4B. And the last one is expanding and modernizing town infrastructure services and town facilities. And Goal number 2 and Strategy 2A are something that are being satisfied by this particular plan here. At the subcommittee meeting last week on O&R, and I've been thinking about this for a long time and looking at this property for quite some time, went back, researched some of the old proposals that had come forward from the Social Plaza, primarily the rezoning plan that was put forward in 2018. And in 2018, when that plan wasn't looked favorably upon, there was a lot of comments from the public, very similar to some of the comments that we hear even today, and have heard over the last 5 or 6 years. We started to grasp on as a community to this idea of a master plan for the Social Plaza. And if you kind of look at the time frame from 2018, we had our comprehensive rezone after that wasn't favorably looked upon. We also had subsequently to that the filing for the PUD in 2023. So 2018, we're here in 2024. Hopefully this is something that will be moving forward. If in fact that does, and they pursue the special permit process in the construction period, essentially when we started talking about this master plan 10 years later, this is essentially all that we're going to see. Aside from some interior tenant fit-ups, a couple new people in the food court, really much hasn't happened in the last 10 years. I think that the town wanted to get their arms around that. They wanted to understand that. I think they were concerned that there might be a large pipeline of things coming. None of that's happened. In fact, absolutely none of it has. Moving on to my staff recommendation, I'll skip over the part about Mr. Seidman. I don't want to steal his thunder. He can very accurately cover that for the board. What we have done is we had a planning board favorable recommendation. There was a couple comments that came out of the planning board. One of those was related to the concept plan and making sure that the concept plan was in fact in keeping with and abided to as we move through the further permitting process. And the second one was from the chair, who had talked about, quote, a sunset clause, and this idea of if this zoning isn't exercised by a particular date, it would then lapse. And in my discussions with Carolyn Murray, who you're all very familiar with, she felt as though that wasn't necessary. The council, the planning board, the applicant, several other entities outlined in Massachusetts general law. At any given point, the planning board could advertise, repeal this ordinance, or amend this ordinance if they felt as though something wasn't playing out how it has been discussed and intended to. Mr. Marinelli read some of my recommendation, which I won't continue to read again. We had some other questions. There were some questions about the concept plan, which we have described in detail, basically being a plan view of the text. And then the ultimate recommendation from the planning staff was a favorable recommendation to the planning board, as outlined in the report. The planning board made a unanimous favorable recommendation to the council with the revisions that I had just spoke about, and that was a unanimous vote on October 8th. I can answer any questions, Mr. President. I can be available for questions that come up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we'll keep going, and if you can be available, that would be great.
Okay.
So the next folks we're going to hear from is Simon Properties, and I have Tim Fox and Clay Hallman.
No, that's not you. Oops. Got it.
Got it. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to be here in front of you guys again. I will try to be brief again. My name is Clay Hallman. I'm head of real estate research for Simon Property Group. My job is to understand and track trends across the shopping center industry and the retail industry, and then to help our leasing and development teams look at our properties and see what they're going to look like in the future, and talk about what products would work the best there and what tenants would work the best there. Happy to be here to share the Simon perspective on the mall industry and why we are bullish on South Shore and supportive of this residential project. About Simon, we own about 110 malls across the United States, many in this market, including North Shore, Burlington, Copley, Cape Cod, and we own about 80 outlet malls, value centers that we call premium outlets, including Rentham Village Premium Outlets, which is kind of due west of us. The key point I think about Simon, not that we own a lot of malls, but we primarily own successful A-quality malls across the country, including some of the best malls in the country. So other developers have really struggled over the past decade or so. We've been very successful in evolving our shopping centers and taking advantage of development opportunities where they've presented them. So what is going on in the mall industry today? We're at a real period of bifurcation in the mall industry. A lot of people talk about dead malls, they talk about malls dying. The truth is that is happening, but also there are a lot of very successful, thriving centers. So really we're in a period of mall winners and losers, and kind of we're feeling it out and seeing which ones are going to struggle and which ones are going to be the ones that are going to be around for the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years. So how did we get here? First, the bad. We built too many malls. So in the 80s and 90s, every town had to have a mall. We didn't build just malls, we built power centers, we built lifestyle centers, we built outlet malls, we built strip centers. End of the day, we had more shopping centers square footage per capita than any other country in the world, doubled. And that's kind of the kindling, and then the spark that lit the fire was the internet. So the internet used to be a few percentage points in terms of total retail shopping. Today, it's about 30 to 35% of all retail sales. So definitely a disruption to the way people shop. The good news is retailers still need stores, and it's turned out that omni-channel is what successful retailers do. They have the right mix of stores and online. They don't need as many stores, but they need stores. It's a good place for them to acquire customers, a good place for them to, people can return, buy online, pick up in store. And it's the most successful retailers today are omni-channel retailers. And they don't have as many stores, but the ones they have, they want to be in top locations with the most traffic and the most eyeballs. So fewer stores also means fewer malls. So there will be success for malls, there'll just be fewer, and they're gonna look different. Primarily, there'll be less department stores. The department store industry is a whole nother discussion, but there will be fewer department stores, probably a lot more mixed use in terms of experiential entertainment, food, mixes of uses, and really the successful malls in the future are gonna have larger trade areas because they'll be even better. So this leads to the big question, which will be the malls that survive and flourish going forward? So for me, it's really three big things. One, you have to have great real estate. If you think about where South Shore Plaza is located, it's kind of irreplaceable real estate. You could never find a location and acquire that land today. Perfect super regional location to serve the entire, South Shore. Two, you have to have proactive ownership, well-capitalized ownership, and kind of inexperienced ownership. Developing and redeveloping malls is not easy. You've got multiple mall owners with department stores. You've got different zoning rules. You have a lot going on, and it's kind of a grind and very tedious. But I think as Simon, we spend every month going over each one of our properties and looking at what development opportunities are out there. If we were to get boxes back, who would go there? What would be the opportunities? So we are very diligent on all of our properties about what we would do when those opportunities arise. And then finally, local collaboration. So, it's why we're here. We need to be on the same page in terms of the mall ownership and the communities. So what might be coming to malls near you or to South Shore someday? It'll be a mix of uses. It'll be a lot more food, be entertainment, sports fields, fitness, medical office, and the last big one, the one that we're doing the most of around our portfolio is residential. And on our last conference call, our CEO called out our residential pipeline. He said that the phrase he used was residential and retail goes together hand in glove. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, Clay. Tim Fox, Simon Property Group, South Shore Plaza. The integration and introduction of residential uses at our retail centers, and specifically our suburban shopping centers, has been a growth trend at our company over the last 10 plus years. And we're now roughly 10% of our mall portfolio with in-place residential or planned residential projects. Sampling of the projects are depicted here. And these are developments that have been successfully executed across the country, from Texas to Minnesota to Georgia, Florida, Pennsylvania, California, and again, Georgia. And these are some of our most successful properties that are seeing this diversification. We've had a lot of success partnering with best-in-class residential developers like ZOM in adding multifamily Class A residential developments to our properties. Our experience has been resoundingly positive, and we're fully confident that the same will be true here. As Clay mentioned, our CEO said in our last call, last investor call, the relationship between residential and retail uses is symbiotic, and that relationship has resulted in ongoing investment beyond initially planned residential projects. A good example of this sort of development momentum has been exhibited at Southdale Center in Edina, Minnesota, which is a suburb of the Twin Cities. Southdale was one of the very first enclosed shopping malls in the country, and Simon acquired the property in the mid-2000s. Over the last 10 plus years, Southdale has experienced a bit of a renaissance and has taken on a new identity with a full mix of uses. And all of this change started in 2014 with a residential project called One Southdale Place. One Southdale Place paved the way for successive development projects, including a hotel, restaurants, Lifetime Fitness, Restoration Hardware, and more recently, a high-end local grocery store and entertainment uses. Interestingly, Southdale Center, which was one of the first enclosed shopping malls, is now setting the trends in the industry, diversifying away from kind of strict retail uses and incorporating other uses, notably residential. The success of One Southdale Center and the resurgence of the property has been the subject of 2 Wall Street Journal articles, as well as a feature piece on NPR. Bringing us back to South Shore Plaza and the residences at South Shore, we feel this project is that catalyst. We have the utmost confidence in ZOM to deliver the type of first-class product this property and this community deserve. There's been mention of a master plan, and our master plan is the continued improvement of South Shore Plaza. And this project is a vital step in that process. This project has our full attention. Development at mature retail properties is an incremental process, just like development at Southdale Center took place over a period of 10+ years, and that continues on into the present and the future. This evolved over time, and there wasn't a set plan back 10+ years ago that there was some formula that was followed. This was more organic, and we certainly expect that will be the case here. This residence at South Shore is a very important step, and the next step in that process is the redevelopment of the old 99 building. And we are working with a really exciting tenant, which we hope to announce later this year, who would be bringing a mix of both kind of a specialty grocery and a restaurant use, which we think would be great for the property and a nice complement to this project. What I'd like to say is that the next step in that process would be the redevelopment of the Lord and Taylor building, but unfortunately we do not control that building. It's leased to a third party. There is the possibility that we could obtain control of that building in the future, and we hope that will change, because we think that could be certainly better use than it is today, and we have some good ideas, and they're speculative in nature, but like I said, that property is under the control of a third party at the moment. We hope that change, but our focus is entirely on the residences at South Shore, and we know that ZOM will deliver on this amazing project. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to ask Carl Sedman, Research Affiliate and Consultant with Financial Peer Review. Carl?
Great. Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to summarize the peer review I did of the financial impact analysis report by Fiscal Planning and Development that was submitted by the developer. I was hired by the town to do this independent peer review, and as part of that, I undertook a number of activities. I had a site visit and met with the development team and town officials, reviewed a number of data sources to kind of validate and test some of the assumptions and results in the analysis. I interviewed multiple town officials, including the assessor and finance director, the police chief, the fire chief, the DPW commissioner and town engineer, as well as the head of the school department. So just a high-level summary, I think the fiscal impact analysis report is a sound and good assessment of the project's likely direct fiscal impact, and its conclusion that there'll be a large positive net fiscal impact for the town, I definitely agree with. Fiscal's report does a lot of things with specific data points, and I felt more comfortable with a range. So I look at the likely net fiscal impact on an annual basis for the town to be in the $400,000 to $600,000 range. So let me talk a little about some of the biggest components of that. I mean, the first and most important component is going to be property tax revenues. That's the largest source of revenue that the ZOM development will bring to the town. And the fiscal impact analysis report estimated the property tax revenue by looking at one comparable project, the elevation apartments in Quincy, and made an adjustment to that based on higher rents at the ZOM, projected for the ZOM development, and estimated a $350,000 per unit assessed value. So I tested that in two ways. I looked at the assessments of two other properties that, based on the market analysis for the developer, had similar per square foot rents to what was projected at ZOM. And then I also did my own estimate of what the net income from the property would be. Assessors often take the net income of the property, capitalize that, and use that to assign an assessed value. So based on those two methods, I looked at, my conclusion was the assessed value is going to come in between $325,000 to $350,000 per unit, which will result in annual tax revenue of between $1,011,000 and $1,089,000 with the additional CPA tax. There's a little bit of an offset for that because you have to deduct the property tax revenue you're now collecting for the property to get the increment to the city, to the town. And the fiscal impact report did a very good job of estimating that loss revenue, which would be about $104,000. They differentiated between the residential and commercial rates for the different properties, and they looked at the different valuations for the different class of properties there. The second major revenue component is motor vehicle excise tax, and the fiscal impact analysis projects a little more than $89,000 a year in motor vehicle excise revenue. I actually think that estimate is low and fairly conservative. I'm estimating something closer to $100,000 to $122,000. The fiscal impact analysis assumed an average 1.1 vehicles per household. They assumed the studios and one bedrooms would just have one vehicle, and the two-bedroom units would have 1.25 vehicles, and I think that's going to be low. Some of the studios or one-bedroom units will have a couple with two cars. They won't all have one car. The developer themselves is estimating 1.5 vehicles, per unit, and even when you look at census data, the number of vehicles per household is higher. There'll also be a small amount of tax revenue from the meals tax that wasn't included in the fiscal impact analysis. That's not a big number. I estimated it at about $6,000 a year based on typical household spending on meals. So overall, my estimate of the tax revenue for the project, new tax revenue will be between $1,002,432 and $1,112,893. In terms of the one-time fees, there'll be significant one-time fees, $429,000 for water and sewer connection fees, and I confirmed that estimate with the Department of Public Works. The building permit fees were estimated at $1.9 million based on a $90 million construction budget. I think that's actually a little conservative too, because more recent construction costs have been higher than what's been estimated there, so you might actually end up with slightly higher building permit fees. But that's another almost $2.5 million of one-time fees. The offset to the revenue is going to be the impact of the project on town costs, and that is really focused on three areas: police, fire, and schools. I reviewed the estimate with the police chief of the need for one additional police officer to address increased service calls from the project, and he agreed with that assessment, although he did say that there's a lot of variation across developments in terms of how much service costs, how many service calls there are. It's going to ultimately depend on who occupies the residence and what comes out of that, but he definitely felt one police unit would cover the impact on the department. And my estimate of that in terms of fringes and salary is slightly less, 115,000 versus 125 in the report. The fire department fiscal cost is estimated about $84,000 based on 16 new calls per year at an average cost of $1,600. And that was really based on the review of service calls from a number of comparable department projects, 15 different complexes in the Boston region. So it's well supported by data. The police chief felt, the fire chief felt it was a little high, so the impact might be a little less than that. The area I gave the most attention to was the school cost impact. The fiscal impact analysis report estimated 28 new school-aged children would come from the new development, and they based that on school-aged children ratios from a database of apartment projects in the Boston area, and it seems like a sound estimate. They don't see that requiring new facilities or new teachers because of the enrollment that the town has experienced. They estimated that those 8 students would be 10 to the elementary school, 10 to the high school, 8 to the middle school, so they'd be fairly spread across. The kind of question I had about the school-age children impact is that this project is only one of multiple projects that could be built in Braintree over the next several years. There are another 5 projects that are either been permitted or proposed, one's in litigation. Those projects, if they were all built, would add another 333 units. And so that could double the impact. You might end up not with 28 new school children, but something close to the order of 60 new school children. So when I discussed that with the school superintendent, he said it's going to depend a lot on whether those new students bunch up into particular grades. But he estimated the need for another 3 to 4 teachers to address that potential impact. And based on the average salary and benefits for a teacher, that would be a cost of $436,000. ZOM represents 47% of those new costs, or about $205,000, which is a little less than what was estimated in the fiscal impact report. The data from, in terms of special education impacts were confirmed by the school superintendent, as was the fact that there wouldn't be an impact on school transportation costs. The report made a small allowance of $125 per unit for other possible impacts in terms of the library or elder services and the like, which also seems reasonable. So the other thing I would just note is, and this has been discussed by the other presentation, is there are sort of non-fiscal benefits that the project could provide to the town. 33 additional affordable housing units. That's going to increase housing options in the town. It's going to help deal with what's a pretty severe crisis in availability of affordable housing. It will add new open space, new trails that will be open to the public. That's a new amenity for the town. It also, create a new residential community, residential district near the mall. That might, as both ZOM and Simon Properties have mentioned, having a new residential district there can set the foundation for other new residential development or other aligned development if the South Shore Mall, goes through further evolution in the future. You've kind of helped create some momentum and presence for that. I would say there are uncertainties about the revenue. The biggest piece of the fiscal impact from this project is the property tax revenue. The actual property tax revenue received will be based on how the ZOM development performs financially. If it achieves its projected rents, and therefore the projected assessment, then you'll be fine. But if something shifts in the market and it doesn't perform as it is anticipated, you'll end up with less property tax revenue. The other, excuse me, the other uncertainty is what will happen with interest rates and developer returns. We recently saw the impact of inflation. If there's a recurrence of inflation, an increase in interest rates and financial returns for development projects, between now and when the project's built, the actual valuation of the project might also be slightly lower than is projected. But just overall, I do think the project is very likely to have, that large positive net fiscal impact for the town, and financially should be an asset. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Okay. Would anyone from the mayor's staff like to speak on Order 24034? Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask if any council members want to speak on Order 24034. Then I'm going to ask the general public if they want to speak, and then I'm going to ask councils if they want to speak again after the general public comments. So right now, is there any members of the council would like to speak on this matter? Okay. So I'm going to open it up to the general public. We've asked people to sign up. So I'm going to call people up. We're going to allow, if you could come up and state your name and address for the record. I'm going to allow people 5 minutes to speak on the matters. I'm going to go by the list that we have here. So the first person that signed up is Rebecca Adler.
So, Rebecca Adler, 49 Arbor Way Drive. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. I hope the committee finds my input helpful. I do request that the Committee on Ordinance and Rules provide a favorable recommendation of the MUPUD application 24-034. There are two important reasons I support this. The first reason, Braintree was previously in a $18 million budget deficit, but now since we passed the $18 million tax override in June, we currently have a $10 million budget gap that we still need to close. So how do we do that? What's the solution to solving our town budget's deficit problem? Well, we could start with this mixed-use development, which is expected to bring in an annual revenue to Braintree, they said before, of $400 to $600K. Zon believes attracting young, single, well-to-do professionals, making area median income, would promote economic development. I agree with them, as this crowd would definitely shop at the South Shore Plaza and become regular patrons of the businesses there. This population with disposable income, they'd want to spend it on recreational activities, dining, shopping, movies, and this would in turn attract new business to Braintree, and then in turn generate more revenue for the town. So, second reason, I'm almost done, has to do with this country right now is facing a housing shortage for everyone. And this is happening in Massachusetts on a large scale. You watch the news, they talk about it a lot. The cost of living is also increasing, making it harder to afford your rent or mortgage. And this project would bring in 325 rental units to Braintree. And most of these units will be market rent and only affordable to professionals making the area median income, which I believe is around 115K. However, developers will be allocating, setting aside 10% of units, 33 to affordable housing rent. And by affordable housing, we mean they will be affordable to persons making 80% of the area median income. So people making moderate income, like myself, which includes professionals such as police officers, firemen, teachers, speech pathologists, librarians, occupational therapists, social workers. This also includes people who are retired and on a fixed income, who I see a lot in my area. Actually, many of my neighbors in East Braintree, the landing area, fall into one or some of these categories and could also benefit from living in one of these affordable housing units, which is why I propose increases the percentage of affordable units from 10 to 15%. So it would be 49 units instead of 33. According to my research, developments that are 100 units or more can go up to at least 15% comfortably. And there's different ways to offset the costs. I'm sure that they could figure it out. I don't know if a parking reduction, I don't know if that's possible, but it's something they could look into. I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak. Thank you to everyone who came out here today. Your presence here tonight shows that you guys care about this, whether you agree with me or not. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. The next person we have signed up is Liz Page.
Hello, Liz Page, 137 Stores Ave. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I respectfully request, as one of those constituents representing many others, that the members of the Town Council deny this proposal known as MUPUD. The project before the Town Council is a zoning amendment. It is not a project to merely decide that you like and support it. The residents most affected by this project have asked over and over that town officials actually look at the zoning for this plan. We ask that you do your job as our elected officials and support your constituents most impacted by this project. The project does not comply with and circumvents the Braintree zoning bylaw, along with allowing other negative aspects of land use and planning. It reverses years of precedent preventing Simon Properties from using Lakeside Drive as one of their access egress points. To date, both the Planning Board and the Ordinance and Rules Committee have reviewed this project with very minimal discussion of actual zoning. The Director of Planning never once mentioned to either board or committee the exemption of 19 bylaws and the proclamation by ZOM's bylaw, Section 135-617, would supersede all of other Braintree's bylaws to address any discrepancies. Is this intentional? Two of the most damaging exemptions to the abutting neighborhood are 135-601, Table of Principal Uses, and 135-702, Landscaping and Buffer Zones. One undermines a longstanding agreement with Simon Properties and the current conditions of Lakeside Drive, and both impact the abutting neighborhoods. Please note that Lakeside Drive is far beyond the scope of the PUD overlay district. 135-601, the very first item on the use table, is the need for special permits in every district to allow, quote, access across a zone to serve a different zone, end quote. The neighborhood fought long and hard to have the gate installed as an emergency access only. This overlay, since it eliminates that requirement, will allow Simon Properties and ZOM to put a road from any part of the overlay district into the Flaherty neighborhood. The circle, emergency access, as discussed by the planning director at the 10/13/24 meeting of O&R, remains Simon's property and does not fall under the PUD overlay. Any attempt to remove it will be in violation of the current agreement with Simon Properties and the residents. Any attempt to move the emergency access to the opposite end of the site will allow all vehicular traffic to use this road from Granite Street, the plaza, and/or Zom, dumping into a small residential neighborhood and onto Lakeside Drive, and conversely, using Lakeside Drive to access Granite Street, the plaza, and/or Zom. Again, I ask, is this intentional? In 135-702, Simon Properties is exempt from the 100-foot buffer as required under 135-702B as a condition of their special permit. Since they are selling the property, that parcel is no longer exempt from that bylaw, nor should it be. This application allows the development to be sitting in the neighborhood, as evidenced by the fact that a portion of this parcel was always zoned Residence B, the last parcel of the neighborhood that was scooped up by Simon Properties. The existing natural buffer with mature trees and vegetation will be eliminated. The zoning request is not good for Braintree and is devastating for the abutting neighborhoods. It will create drastic safety concerns for all North Braintree neighborhoods by removing an almost 30-year agreement and precedent-setting prohibiting the use of Lakeside Drive as an access or egress from this property. It is not in character with the abutting neighborhood as required under the current bylaw and master plan, and it sets many dangerous precedents that undermine the town's ability to manage development and to honor past agreements. Please deny this project known as ZOM MUPUD. And through the chair, I would like to ask 2 questions of the planning director, if that's possible.
Ask away.
Okay. How do you justify the first question is, how do you justify removing the use table that includes access across a zone to serve a different zone? And the second question is, after much discussion during the Master Plan Steering Committee meetings, and as the Master Plan Steering Committee zoning expert, how do you justify removing the buffer zone?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to answer those questions?
Should I remain up here during that time?
Your 5 minutes are up, so that'll be it.
If I may ask them to pull up the concept plan while I'm speaking, Mr. President.
Sure.
Thank you. I will start to talk to keep this moving, Mr. President. And not recalling exactly the questions, I'm going to try to answer them as best as I can. I think the first one related to removing the access across a zone line. The ZOM's plans in conjunction with South Shore Plaza are to come through the actual South Shore Plaza. They will be interior to the South Shore Plaza property that is zoned highway business. They will need to cross the zone line from highway business to access the MUPUD. The neighborhood, on the other hand, is coming down a public street. Public streets are not zoned. So crossing from removing this is not enabling anything else to happen on Lakeside Drive. Lakeside Drive is a public street and is not zoned. You're not crossing a zone line in that situation. The only crossing of zone lines, if and when this goes forward, will be from interior, if I may, Mr. President, interior to the South Shore Plaza. This is all zoned highway business. We all know that the plan is to come through the South Shore Plaza. They have 3 site drives plus Common Street, and they will be accessing the MUPUD over the zone line. Down here, we have a public street that is zoned nothing. Streets are not zoned. There is no crossing of a zone line in this situation. Removing that does nothing over existing conditions today, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, next person. Time out. We're not going to have conversations going on back and forth, all right? So if you've answered the question, we're all set. Thank you. Hang on. I'm not going to have conversation from the side, okay? Nope, 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 nope. We're not going to have conversations from the audience, okay? The next person up is Kelly Moore. So if you can go up to the podium if you'd like to speak, Mr. Moore. Hang on one second. Nope, I have you signed up as number 3, so you're up now, Mr. Moore. Yep, no, we're going to go in order of the list, sorry. We're not going to deviate. So Kelly Moore's up.
Kelly Moore, 46 Hollis Ave, Braintree. This is a second section of the letter written by Jill Coyle. Hers is the first. As such, I would request no vote be taken tonight because you guys will have a lot of homework to do. Page 36, Community Supported Plan, MUPD Impact. The Planning Director stated this project is in compliance with the master plan as stated in Strategy 2A. She is correct. However, the preservation of the neighborhoods, a theme carried throughout the entire master plan, has been completely ignored. Not only does this project, through the many zoning exemptions, contradict agreements with Simon Properties, but creating community support from communities that are not directly affected by this project is disingenuous and deceptive by ignoring those that live in close proximity to the project. Page 42. Traffic calming, reduce cut-through and truck traffic. MUPD impact. Neither strategy 1B nor 1E can be achieved. The very first item in the use table is the need for special permits in every district to allow access across a zone to serve a different zone. This overlay, since it eliminates the use table, will allow Simon Properties and ZOM or any future owner to put a road through any part of the overlay district into the neighborhood. This would allow all vehicular traffic to use the road at will, cutting through the plaza and ending up on Lakeside Drive, and conversely, cutting through the neighborhoods via Lakeside Drive to get to Granite Street, the plaza, or ZOM. There is no law to prohibit access, and merely stating it as a public hearing will not enforce it. Mr. Reynolds, take notes. We have also learned that signage does very little to deter drivers. Simon Properties is currently prohibited from allowing traffic to cross zones, except in an emergency via the gate at the circle, and has been supportive in that effort. That is the end of that letter. All that glitters is not gold. ZOM will not save Braintree. This is a developer versus Braintree, not just a neighborhood.
Fact is, Simon does not need ZOM. $20 million is a drop in the bucket. So Braintree does not need the neighborhoods. Braintree does need the neighborhoods. So take care of the neighborhoods. And Braintree will succeed. We're not against development. We're against wrong development, and this is wrong development. They have 30 letters of support. That's impressive. We have 40 people here tonight, hundreds at every meeting last year, not to mention 35 people here tonight or last week. Recently, I was at the Flaherty School. I pointed out to the teachers through the windows that they will have a 4-story building right there. They were horrified. The prospect of this atrocity outside their doors. Whatever buffer zone ZOM presents is not sufficient enough to say they are separate from the neighborhood, especially when they say they want to integrate with the neighborhood. Their attorney uses Hanover Crossing as a comparison, and it's not even close. It's not the same. There's no neighborhood behind the apartments at Hanover Crossing. Furthermore, the math does not work. They say 20-some-odd students.
In 5 minutes, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. However, if you add students, it's $18,000 per student. If you add 25 students, that's an additional $465,000 that will cost Braintree. Our town does not have the luxury, and I'll close with this, our town does not have the luxury of trampling its neighborhoods. These guys capitalize on the neighborhood and on Braintree. We respectfully request the town council reject this zoning change before you, require them to recreate their proposal, which would allow them to adapt to the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Next is Justine Wang.
Thank you, Council Presidents and all the councils. I'm here, 25 Lakeside Drive, Justine Huang. I'm here today to tell all the councils and members that our community deserves better. It's not that we can do better, we deserve better. I'm here respectfully to ask you to turn down the request that ZOM has put in front of you without any modifications. I got a couple of reasons. First one is in ZOM's request, bylaw 135-904.1 indicate the light protections for our communities. Example is number 3, roof side. No roof side should be permitted. ZOM's proposal in page 7 indicates a lot regarding to signage and route. What could be on top of the buildings. However, why do they want to eliminate this requirement which is applied to the general business area? As well as in page 7 of ZON's requirement, it indicates that it should have the right to put on any side of premises. And also on the 135-904.2 highway business, ZOM had requested that to completely write off from their permits. In that particular section, it says prohibit of permit commercial sign or of permits commercial sign are prohibited. ZOM has specifically asked to remove that requirement. Why? They could put a sign right in front of Florida students on their property line. I hope they be the good neighbor, not do that, but just a hope. So within this, I'm asking the council to reconsider, put those requirements back to protect our neighbors, to protect our kids, and protect the lining pollutions that this building could have brought to us. Number two that I would like to bring out is the 135-610 regarding to criteria for rezoning, such as protection of water body and water supplies, wetlands, floodplains, agriculture lands, wildlife, and other natural resources. ZOM had asked to exclude this law from our bylaw. Why? Because Quincy Old Reservoir is considered a flood zone under the Massachusetts flood plans. And our neighbors still paying for flood zone insurance down the street of Florida neighborhoods. Why do they want us to exclude that from this MUPUD? For the section B of the rezoning criteria, the substantial of land for increase and decrease intensity of development include extent of wetlands and drainage areas, availability of utility, include sewage and water. ZOM has indicated they will respond for anything within their units, within their property line. However, if you're looking at the page, if you're looking at the recommendation perspective, who is going to pay for bringing the utility to the permits, which is not being discussed. And I know in our planning zones department, the staff recommendation is they are currently in the discussions of who's going to pay for bringing the utility up to date to provide, to support this unit, such as we all know we need a second pumping station in Florida neighborhood. Who's going to pay for it? Would that be on record that ZOM's going to be willing to pay for it? Which is not in this document. And ZOM has requested to us to, this law do not apply to them. So this, if you're looking at budget perspective, has that budget been included in the visibility? And last question that I'm going to ask, if I may request, is that our planning board, ZOM's development, can this be on the record that there will not be a road continue to Lakeside Drive to the Plaza property, and it should be only emergency vehicle only as it is today, and no commercial vehicle or delivery should be used for Lakeside Drive to serve this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person that signed up is Marianne Kayla.
Good evening, Mary Ann Kaler, 280 Common Street. Multiple people have already suggested ideas that I was going to recommend that you deny this because of multiple reasons. You may have 30 flossy, nice recommendations for this, but in the numerous meetings that there have been, numerous citizens, residents have gotten up against this. Please, please don't disregard their request to deny this project, because it isn't going to be a cure-all. Thank you.
Next is Jen Wadlin. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Wadlin, 37 Parkside Circle. When I was listening, I just wanted to point out two things. It was never mentioned that ZOM doesn't keep their properties. ZOM sells their properties after about 3 years. So the neighborhood can be stuck with this, and ZOM moves on for profit. But the neighborhood and the property values on Lakeside, so I'm concerned about Justine, I'm concerned about the Kellys, I'm concerned about the Calderaras. I'm going on record with concern for the neighbors that are affected and will be affected in their property values, which might be their largest investment. So they live on a single-family road today that is going to change dramatically. No matter what you call it, a parking lot, 2 residential lots, it's going to change dramatically. And that concerns me deeply. So, and I also wanted to point out that if you Google Southdale Shopping Center, which is the flagship center, I would like you to Google it at some point and see all the shootings. They might rival our shooting record. So I don't know if that is our goal, living right near there. I don't think that should be our goal. Okay, now back to this letter. So thank you for having me today. As part of the Master Plan Committee, I thought it would be helpful to provide you with a summary of all the 2023-2033 Master Plan references to protecting residential neighborhoods, a theme that carried through the entire document and demonstrates that the ZOM project is contrary to the Master Plan theme. There are over 12 references throughout the Braintree Master Plan referring to protecting residential neighborhoods. Some may just be references, however, many require action. For those that require action, ZOM does not comply with the Master Plan Directive. Pages 16, 24, and 27 are reference only. Pages 22 and 23 contain a map depicting all of North Braintree is categorized as a neighborhood preservation area. Page 21, 28, and 30, sensitive design, protect from development, protect with natural areas, preserve buffers. It is very important to preserve buffers, and the buffer here is gone. So I do want to point that out, that if you are considering approving this, I would like you to consider approving with conditions and consider adding the buffer. The placement of the project on this parcel has put it close to the residential neighborhoods instead of pushing it back to the 99. Why not push it back? Why infringe upon the neighborhood? Why not ask that? Nobody is against development as a whole in Braintree. Well, I don't know about nobody. I am not against development as a whole in Braintree, but why not push it back? Why not make it a little nicer for the residential neighborhoods? The transition building proposed in the plan is not a transition building for transitioning the plaza to the abutting neighborhood, but a transition for the retail use to a large residential use. In other words, it is to benefit the applicant and only the applicant and ignores the abutting neighborhood. Therefore, this absolutely does not, quoting the planning director, integrate as part of the property to not change the smaller scale educational and single-family character of the abutting neighborhood to the east, quoted by the planning director on 8/3/2023. The applicant's exemption of 135-702B eliminates the 100-foot buffer that is in place to protect the residential districts from encroaching business districts. I would ask you again to consider adding that back in. Why not? What do we have to lose here? Why not add it back in? The existing natural buffer with mature trees and vegetation is going to be eliminated for this project and replaced with the largest apartment building ever to be built in Braintree, and it will be allowed by right. Again, I'm asking you to consider the project pushed back with a larger buffer. We had asked that specifically of ZOM. We asked also for some school allowances for the Flaherty School when they went through the construction of the second floor mall. It was very disturbing to the kids, so we asked them to consider some allowances there. We haven't really seen anything, and once it's approved, the ship has sailed. There's no asking for anything. So I would ask that you consider those items. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Steve Shasha. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Steve Shasha, Hollis Ave. In the past, when neighborhoods were threatened by large developments, we negotiated protections, even using CPA funds to preserve buffers. Now our elected officials tell us we don't have that luxury because of the town's fiscal crisis. 7 years ago, the mayor and chief of staff, Joe Reynolds, said Braintree could do an $84 million school renovation without a debt exclusion. Well, this body should have asked, how can we afford $3.5 million in annual debt payments from the general fund? Nobody did. It was accepted that the narrative was too good to be true because that was easier than questioning it. Councilor Hume, you were reported in the Patriot Ledger as saying, we can afford this. But now we've spent $22 million out of the general fund on those debt payments, and we're $18 million in the hole. So could we? While responsibly managed towns all put school projects in front of voters for a debt exclusion, the Braintree Town Council said, we know better than those other towns. We can do this the easy way. But it turns out you don't, and we couldn't. Now, many of the same elected officials are telling us we can have the kind of desirable shopping center that most of us leave town to visit. We watch the growth of malls in Burlington, Westwood, Dedham, Hingham, all competently managed through comprehensive plans. And we hear you say, we know better than those other towns. Sure, we've never publicly discussed or questioned the 9 pages of zoning we're about to pass, but we said the word catalyst a bunch of times, so we don't really need a plan. We're not losing business accounts, we're losing business parcels. Department of Revenue reports that in the last 20 years, we have eliminated 100 commercial parcels from town, at the same time adding 1,000 residential parcels, all taxed at half the rate. Yet the solution being proposed is to take one of the most valuable commercial parcels in town and convert it to a residential use. This trend will intensify without an economic development plan. In 2019, one councilor with no authority to update the town's master plan stood up with a unanimously passed resolution demanding that it be updated. One councilor can make a difference. But instead of standing up for a comprehensive economic development plan, too many of you sit there talking about repurposed abandoned buildings, medical and biotech uses, Amazon grocery stores, Chick-fil-A's, and other businesses, but we now have more abandoned commercial buildings than ever before. Attractive shopping centers and vibrant downtowns are economic development engines. That is true. And that's why they are the center of economic development plans. Not just for the property taxes, but because they spread economic vitality as people come to town to shop. But the effects of South Shore Plaza spread more like a cancer, eating away at our town's reputation and commercial base. The $60 million in lost building value in just the past 3 years is just the tip of the iceberg of the damage that Simon does to this town. Since 2021, the planning director, paraphrased, has said a residential use may improve the character at the South Shore Plaza, but not in the undeveloped open space lands. It needs to be thoughtfully placed, planned, positioned, designed, and integrated as part of the property. This is long overdue, but we should not be discussing only 8% of the property. We need clear long-term vision and a fairly robust planning effort. The current zoning of the South Shore Plaza already allows the development of multifamily housing on the property by special permit, and with a simple density variance, they could do this same project through the existing special permit. They are pursuing this route for the sole purpose of avoiding a comprehensive plan. At the last planning board meeting, the planning director just came out and said it. Not that we don't need a plan, just that she had given up on one. We gave Simon a reduction in their parking requirements because they said that was a catalyst, and it was an easy thing to do. But we've done nothing about the parking for small businesses in the squares because that's hard. We allow developers to tell us what traffic improvements they'll make because it's easy, but we have no overall traffic plan because it's hard. We spot zone any property that a developer asks us to because it's easy, but we have no comprehensive development plan because it's hard. This body seems to have given up as the planning director has. We don't even discuss the hard things anymore, like our school buildings, roads, and open space. But for any town with a split tax rate, its economic development plan is its future. So if you've given up on that as the planning director has, then this town has no hope. Thank you.
The next person that signed up is Rob Cuddier.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Rob Cuddier of 143 Middle Street. So I've come here to in opposition to the project. I think the location is wrong. I think the size is wrong, and I think the manner in which this deal was conducted was simply wrong. Firstly, the residents of the Flaherty School neighborhood do not want this eyesore Khrushchevka-style block building in their space. This project was continually pushed without addressing the concerns of the residents that it most directly affects. Now, I don't live in that neighborhood. I live on the other side of town, but I would like to think that if someone was trying to build a seaport-style housing project behind my house, that the neighbors there would come up and speak for my neighborhood. The location is very wrong. Now, I'm not against development, and there are better places in Braintree that this could have been done, such as on Forbes Road, where there's no residents, those 2 vacant office buildings on Wood Road that I think have been vacant since the 90s, or something like Lenox Farms or Devon Woods, which is in the middle of the woods. The size and type are also wrong. Too large, too ugly. I mean, really, does anybody find that cookie-cutter prefab style attractive? Housing like that would be, now, condos and townhomes are an example of multifamily housing that I think would be a much better fit for this town, and on the flip side would also help small local landlords who live in Braintree, such as my neighbor, rather than sending monthly rent to Zom down in Florida. With the amount of residents that this will bring in, and with the dire financial straits that the town is in, the last thing we should be doing is bringing in more mouths to feed. We need to right the financial ship, cut waste where it could be done, bring in commercial businesses in order to pad the town's finances, maybe bring in a Whole Foods or something so that we stop losing the health food business to Weymouth. Just some food for thought there. Corporate development like this is not the type that any town should want. The tactics are shady, and they have nothing personally to risk. Most of them live hundreds of miles away. And development should be done by local companies, local developers who know the area, who know the people, instead of using the tactics like Zom is doing, where they would come in 3 years and then leave town. But in the end, what it comes down to, so a corporate entity is rolling in, portraying themselves as God's gift to the world, proposing their own changes to the way that the town conducts business. I once likened that, 2 years ago, I think, to giving a seagull a French fry. Suddenly, there's a lot of them. Allowing a corporate entity to come in and dictate their will upon the town is more than a slippery slope. There will be more. There will be many more, and there will be larger projects than this one. The only people who stand to benefit are the guys sitting directly behind me. Everybody over here will not benefit. In the end, it comes down to what you, the council, decide. 9 of you, all of whom I know got into politics for the best of reasons, to look out for the residents. You guys hold the balance in your hands on this. And to all of you, one Braintree resident to 9 others, I implore you to stand with the people, not with the corporate developer. Stand with the people of the neighborhood Braintree, the people of the Flaherty neighborhood. There are some people who might be wearing their Zom hat. Tonight, I'm wearing my Braintree hat. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person that signed up is Robert Toma. Or am I not reading your handwriting correctly? Good evening.
Thank you for letting me speak. Wow, these guys over here basically said everything that I wanted to say. The people behind me are doing a really good job trying to sell you on this, and I applaud them for trying. But the gentleman that talked, he's asking you all to do what's right for the town. 30 pieces of silver isn't worth it. You guys have to work out of this without this. This doesn't work for anyone. And I wouldn't want to make these people my enemy, and you will. Thank you.
Next is Audrey, I hope I pronounced your last name, Androcino. Andronico. I wasn't even close.
My name.
I have a hard time pronouncing names sometimes.
It's Andronico. It's my husband's Italian. I'm Irish. Good evening, members of the Town Council, Council President. Tonight I stand before you to urge your support for the Zom housing proposal, a project that I believe is essential to Braintree's future. No, it's not a cure-all, but it marks the beginning of progress, of Braintree moving forward. We are at a critical juncture. Our town desperately needs new sources of revenue, and this $140 million investment offers exactly that. It's not just about housing, it's about revitalizing our local economy, starting with the South Shore Plaza. This development will breathe new life into an area that has so much untapped potential. Let's also put the scale of this proposal into perspective. It is not a monster project. It's a modest 325 units. It's not sprawling. It's thoughtfully designed to fit within our community and greatly enhance the area. These units will create much-needed housing opportunities, not to mention beautiful public outdoor space, ensuring that Braintree remains a place where people of all walks of life can call home. Additionally, it is the first step in the revitalization of the plaza, our largest taxpayer. Furthermore, we have a responsibility to the people of this entire city. Delaying or rejecting this proposal sends the wrong message about our commitment to addressing our revenue problems. Let's not be distracted by opposition that lacks substance and is based on emotion. The facts speak for themselves. This project benefits Braintree in every measurable way. Councilors, the decision before you is one of leadership. A vote for this proposal is a vote for progress, a vote to move Braintree forward. I urge you, seize this moment. Be the leaders our town needs. Vote yes on the Zom housing proposal. Braintree's future depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Bob McPherson.
Good evening. I'm here in support of this project also. Responsible projects are what this town needs, and they've taken the time, they've put a nice plan together. They got caught up last time in the hoopla that went on with the former administration and the fear that was robocalls constantly at the homes and stuff. I actually called Frank and I called Simon. I wanted to know if the cars were going to go through that neighborhood, because that's all I heard from people. That was their biggest fear. And that cannot take place. Also, the idea that they could sell this project to someone else, they would still have the same conditions they have. So that fear is eliminated. It's time that we do responsible development in this town. Things are falling apart. We all know that. I don't want to go through all that. Everybody knows it. But to not pass something on 100 acres that has direct access to the highway, to the roads that are paved for this, that would not be responsible. The fear that's been passed along, most of it's ridiculous, quite frankly, I think. So I'm so happy they came back. I can't believe they had the nerve to come back the way they were treated last time. And I hope you vote on this correctly.
Thank you. And the last person that we've had sign up is John Harron.
John Harron, 141 Walnut Street. Our new master plan, Chapter 9, Residential Neighborhoods and Housing Options, has a theme which includes that are compatibly scaled and well-designed to harmonize with the context of the surrounding neighborhood. This project does not meet that criteria. It asks for a large number of bylaw exemptions. Other developers do not have these. They do not need these. Why does ZOM need these? Granting these exemptions is poor policy and sets a poor precedent for the town. For the next developer will want the same. I urge you to turn this down. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that's the last of the people from the general public that we had signed up to speak. I'm going to ask if anybody else from the general public would like to speak at this time. Okay. This time, I'm going to ask if there's any council members that would like to speak. Council Flaherty.
Thank you. The question of this zoning change has been one of District 1's top concerns ever since it was first proposed. At this point, residents understand what's on the table in abundant detail. They understand the project's scale and density, its inclusionary component. They know about the 13-foot berm and the vegetation on top, the walking path, the plan for the gate, the cost of the rent, the financial implications to our town, and so many other aspects. As the District 1 councilor, I have been committed to keeping residents informed about the project because it really affects our district the most. The mall affects everyone, but the Flaherty neighborhood is the most impacted of all. I've discussed the details at length with people at meetings and events, on the phone and by email, and because of all this, I know residents understand this proposal in considerable depth. They understand it, and they see more drawbacks to their neighborhood than benefits. The reasons are varied, and many of them have been represented already tonight, so I don't need to belabor them now. The point is, these are the abutters. It's their neighborhood, and they don't want this project. As their counselor, I bear a unique accountability to represent the needs and wishes of those who are most impacted by the proposal at hand. I take this responsibility seriously. It's what I was elected to do, so I will not support this change.
Are there any other councils that would like to speak at this time? Council Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, for one, am happy to be here this evening to have this discussion. As a counselor, I have not had an opportunity to weigh in and to address many of the comments that I have heard over the last, I think, 3-4 years that when this project was first proposed. However, as a member for 13 years of the Braintree Planning Board, both as an elected official and as an appointed official, I've had the unique opportunity and the distinct advantage are participating in numerous, complicated, and, as this case, emotional projects. Most of those projects had a lot of the same fear-mongering which we're hearing tonight, and we've heard all along, and they're based not on fact. There is a number of things that we do as a community to protect our neighborhoods, and we are upholding that responsibility here with this particular neighborhood, regardless of the doom and gloom of change that is upon us. There are a number of ordinances and protections that are in place. There are controls that are in place. This process, for example, this is the third hearing? Or actually, let's count how many hearings we've had in this iteration of the project. 3 with the planning board, 3 with our ordinance committee. And all this is to get us to a point where the applicant is going to utilize their legal rights in our Braintree zoning bylaws and 40 Act, which dictates, that's the state law that dictates our laws. All property owners have rights. Neighbors have rights, individuals have rights, businesses have rights. And one of our main protections of the planning board and of this council is to ensure that all of our rights are protected. When we do that, we can't satisfy every single concern, legitimate concern. We do cover all the legitimate concerns. I've served with a number of the people who are on the current planning board. Tonight's vote will put an option in front of the Braintree Planning Board to hear a special permit for the future use of this site in question. It has been dissected. It has had experts who have weighed in on this, professionals who are highly regarded in the planning and development field, that have come in with a positive viewpoint of this. And I just want to point out that the previous iteration, the original iteration of this project, had a stacked deck right from the outset. The previous administration used a heavy hand to put a very heavy thumb on the scale before this project was even proposed or given a public opportunity to present itself. And it immediately was vilified, misrepresented, and many relevant zoning ordinances and issues were taken out of context. There was a number of letters that were received yesterday by the council clerk that were not in favor of this project. And one of them, actually 2 of them, really got to me as just an irresponsible, convoluted, twisted logic that ignored our laws. And they were by elected officials at this community at one point. One was a planning board member and chair. Another one was a counselor on this very committee and a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The first one I reference is from former town councilor Steve Sasha. This letter is a convoluted attempt to distract the public's attention from the straightforward facts of the PUD application before the council. Mr. Sasha and several of his fellow North Braintree Civic Association members continue to misrepresent what this perfectly legal zoning application is attempting to exercise tonight. The latest argument presented in opposition to the ZOM MUPUD application does not accurately depict the facts of this application, what our zoning ordinances actually allow, and how the land use review process actually works. The opposition letters received by the clerk of the council yesterday attempt to refute the estimated number of school students the ZOM project would generate by comparing data. And this is what I mean, convoluted and twisting of facts and taking information out of context and trying to create an argument that bolsters an indefensible position. The opposition basically said the SOM project would generate by comparing data from other communities with unlike demographics and populations, and that have full multi-unit residential units that consist of a high number of 3-bedroom apartments. Apples and oranges, folks. The SOM project has no units larger than 2 bedrooms. The opposition fails to recognize relevant data and analysis from the Braintree School Department, the state educational and housing agencies, and extensive data analysis provided by MAPC over a broad spectrum of community types and decades worth of data collection. What I see in this opposition argument is one that they use hand-picked selective data convenient to their oppositional views, while at the same time accusing the applicant of using faulty data. As for the opposition contention that the true cost per student in Braintree referenced by the SOM team is short by some $24 million is not accurate. Mr. Sasha adds that the additional cost of teacher salaries and retirement-related benefits as relevant to the additional cost burden that the SOM project will create for our schools. This statement is false. The small number of new students that may be added to our school system does not create a need to hire a multitude of new teachers, which would therefore create a need for additional salaries and additional retirement matching costs by the town. What I find to be the most specious argument presented by the opponents of this project is their rationale in questioning the growth value that the SOM project would generate in property value. Mr. Sasha and the NBCA contend that the SOM property values are grossly overstated when compared to other multi-unit complexes in Braintree. The 3 residential complexes in question are Lenox Farms, Liberty Park, and the Ridge on West Street. This contention is false, mostly because of what the statement doesn't say. These 3 properties are located off the beaten path in our community, not near businesses and retail centers, or as a previous speaker said, they're in the woods. Not near business and retail centers. They do not enjoy the adjacent location of the high-end value properties of the South Shore Plaza. They do not have anywhere near the valuable living amenities that will be offered in the new state-of-the-art high-end apartment living complex proposed. These are the main staples used in the real estate industry to assess property value. Mr. Sasha even goes on to comment that, quote, "It is unlikely Braintree assessments reflect current values, and as such, the community has recently contracted to perform a town-wide reassessment to bring values up to date." End quote. Simply stated, once the assessment values are completed, the gap between the referenced 3 properties and the proposed SOM project will be smaller. Lastly, the most egregious arguments offered by the SOM opposition is that any new housing complex will endanger our children and our neighborhoods. I fail to see where a residential use adjacent to another residential use is a danger to our community. That's hyperbole, and that's fear-mongering. Fabricated statements by former planning board members say that the SOM project will be allowed to gain direct access to the Lakeside Drive is pure fiction. Another false flag statement is that the town has to date failed to address the most relevant issues of this PUD application, such as the plaza's compliance with current special permit conditions, traffic studies, and infrastructure impacts. That's what a special permit does. We are not in a special permit process. That is the next step. To conflate the standard of the initial review and create a perception of impropriety by the town planning staff and the town council. That is actually what they're saying. I will not stand for that kind of accusation against me, my fellow councilors, the planning board members, or our highly professional planning department. This process of the PUD application has been one that has been thoroughly transparent, above board, and even-handed throughout. That cannot be said about the first iteration of this project under the previous administration. And I guess that hurts when someone really wants to be right about something and they're really wrong. The process of the PUD application has been one that has been thoroughly transparent, as I said. The same could not be said about the heavy hand of the previous mayor's thumb on the scales when this project was first presented in 2021. And the mayor announced at the North Braintree Civic Association Town Hall meeting that he was going to direct his planning department to deny the project a fair hearing before there were any hearings at all. I asked my fellow councilors to avoid distractions of the numerous misstatements and the innuendo that the opposition has created in order to ensure that their desire to do nothing about the sorry state of affairs our great town of Braintree finds itself in is due to their desire to be right. And as a result of our town, we'd be damned if we go bankrupt. My support for this project does not in any way mean that I have no desire to protect the nearby Lakeside neighborhood. That is the opposite of what we are sworn to take when we raise our hand as a public official. My past experience as a longtime planning board member and now as a town councilor have aided me in keenly understanding the issues we all face. And I'm fully confident that no harm will come to the Lakeside neighborhood, nor to the town of Braintree as a result of this project being approved. This is a significant moment for our town tonight. We on the council can choose to be a part of a responsible path forward to improve our community, or we can choose to do nothing and to remain a significant part of the problem. I encourage you all to support this PUD opportunity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other councilors like to speak? Council Baraka.
Thank you, President Ryan. And I want to extend my thanks to my colleagues on the Ordinance and Rules Committee who've done a significant amount of work on this. And I also want to thank all of the residents who came out this evening, who've been to multiple meetings, and who have sent in multiple emails. This has been a long process. I think we're going on 3 years. And it's evidenced by the number of comments we've received. Community involvement has been robust. And I want to make sure, I know you heard a little bit about it this evening, but it's important for people watching to know that we did get a very large number of support for this proposal through email and in our inboxes. And for those of you who have voiced your concerns about this project over the last 3 years, it is clear to me your voices have been heard. As a direct result of your feedback, meaningful changes have been made to the final project proposal. Changes that without a significant and prolonged push from the community may not have otherwise been made. These include a 50% reduction to the number of buildings, a 20% reduction in building height, a 34% reduction in unit count, an 8% increase in open space, a 257% increase in the distance between the building and Lakeside Circle, and the addition of a 13-foot berm to provide visual screening. These changes are significant, and again, they're a direct result of your feedback. So should this pass tonight, for those of you who may feel like it's a loss, I see it differently. This is the public process at work, and it takes a long time because it requires compromise. We know, we heard tonight, we know more projects are on the horizon. So instead of saying no, I'd offer let's advocate for what we need by saying yes and. Yes and. What do we need that this project can provide? By saying yes and, you stay at the table. You negotiate for what is most important, and then you're willing to let some of the other things go. In the instance of the planned unit development, it became clear that building height and scale were two of the most important priorities for the community. The developer responded. The trade-off? The loss of age-restricted units and an indoor community space. I think that is okay. We're weighing the trade-offs and focusing on our priorities. And I think this is how we can move Braintree forward. And as we've already heard tonight, we have the master plan to help us provide guidance about how proposals align with the goals and aspirations we agreed to as a community. In the master plan, the South Shore Plaza is called out as a transformation area and one of the town's key economic assets, which represents opportunities for redevelopment with a focus on blighted, underutilized, or vacant property. It's important to note, again, thanks to resident feedback, that Simon Properties has work to do in the area of being transformation and redevelopment. It has been pointed out that basic good neighbor habits like trash pickup are often an afterthought. That issue, however, is not at hand this evening. What is on the table tonight, if this proposal is approved, is fulfilling of a component of the master plan where 7 acres of undisputably underutilized land in a transformation zone will come under separate ownership with a vested interest in upkeep and aesthetics. Redevelopment on this lot alone is estimated to contribute more than $500,000 annually to Braintree's general fund, and that's before the local meals and hotel taxes are factored in. But beyond the persuasive economic argument, there is an intangible benefit to producing more housing, because communities are about people. And without sufficient housing, we stand to lose not only our current residents, but also the promise that new residents bring: innovative ideas, contributions to our workforce, enrichment of our cultural experiences, and striving for, as noted on signs at both ends of our town, being an inclusive community. I believe it is time to say, yes, join us. We welcome you to Braintree, and I will be voting in favor of this proposal tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Council Maglio?
Thank you very much. For 2 years, almost 3, our community is engaged in lengthy and sometimes quite contentious discussions about this housing proposal. There is resistance, and it primarily stems from fears about its financial impact, its density, its traffic and environmental impact, and negative preconceptions about people who rent. The financial arguments against high-density housing don't really stand up to scrutiny. In addition to the report that we have, there are numerous studies that have demonstrated that large rental developments do not decrease nearby single-family home values. In fact, when replacing blighted or vacant lots, these developments, with their landscaping and amenities, often increase neighboring property values and contribute to the vibrancy and growth of the community. Concerns about school overcrowding, particularly regarding school-aged children, are important, but data shows that apartment buildings, especially newer and higher-value developments, house fewer children than an equivalent number of single-family homes. This holds true across all economic levels. Apartment dwellers consistently have smaller households than single-family residences. Higher density housing is more environmentally and economically efficient due to economies of scale. Transportation data shows that apartment residents own fewer cars, averaging 1 household compared to 2 in single-family homes, and make fewer trips, particularly on weekends. When apartments are strategically located near transit, shopping, entertainment, and restaurants, residents often choose to walk rather than drive. It leaves us with the stereotype that renters are less engaged in community life, and that's just false. Research shows that renters are equally likely to participate in social groups, join local organizations, and contribute to community life. As for safety concerns, when police calls are analyzed on a per-unit basis rather than just by address, apartment complexes show equal or lower rates of police activity compared to single-family equivalent units. We have a housing crisis in Massachusetts, and the path forward requires us to move past fears and embrace a housing solution that benefits our entire town. Housing developments, when properly planned and executed, strengthen rather than weaken our neighborhoods. This is why I will be voting in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councilors like to talk? Councilor Hume.
Thank you, Mr. President. For this particular parcel of land. This has been the fourth plan presented over the years dating back to 2018, of which I've sat on the council back then. The first plan the neighbors were not for. I supported the neighbors. Second plan was a golf type recreational thing. I thought this would be great. This is everything the neighbors, you know, I thought it was what they would have wanted. Neighbors were not for it. ZOM comes along, they present their last proposal, it was withdrawn. They're here again today, as a previous speaker said, listen to the residents, change their plan. There's been lots of community outreach for this project. There's been a lot more positive support for this project, phone calls, emails, residents talking. Probably, I think I've received more support for this project than I have for those against it. This project allows homeowners who want to stay in Braintree, if they want to downsize, they don't want to do maintenance of their home, they want to stay in the community. I've been in Braintree since 1981. People stay in Braintree because they love this community. There's not a lot of options for people like that to stay here. It's a desirable project. This community needs growth. We all heard about the growth, the lack of growth. It's been stagnant for the last 4 years. That has to change. We're all paying the price we had to do through our taxes and the vote we took earlier this year. We need housing. We need developers and we need businesses who want to do business with Braintree. Developers don't want to do business with Braintree. We've made it so difficult and keep saying no that it costs a lot of money in legal fees and architectural drawings and all kinds of plans. They don't want to do business. I've heard from local banks that have told businesses, do not do business in Braintree. It's not open. And you can see that when you cross through Braintree and Weymouth. The development is night and day. It's stagnant here in Braintree. Quincy, Weymouth are thriving. Yes, they are bigger communities, but the development is smart. It looks great in the areas. It's beautiful. And people are going to it. It's being developed. The developer ZOM here wants to invest $140 million in this community. Nobody else has come before us to invest that kind of money. And they have listened, they're willing to change, and presented the project, all the changes they've done. If we bring residents into Braintree, other businesses are going to come. You've all been to the plaza. It's changed. It has. The demographic has changed. The stores that there have changed. It's a stagnant area. If you look at other communities, travel around the country I've traveled, this is the kind of development you're going to see. Bring residents first, then we can see the supermarkets. Everyone wants a Trader Joe's, Market Basket, whatever that looks like. This will be a viable area. If there's no residents, these businesses are not going to want to do business in the Simon Mall property. So this project will promote and attract new growth. The days of saying no to everything in Braintree needs to end, and it has to end tonight. I sit here as a counselor at large. I'm here for all the residents in Braintree, including District 1. All of Braintree will benefit. I'm going to support this project tonight for Braintree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ringus.
Thank you. I do have some comments, but I also have some questions. I'm going to call a few people to the podium. Can I call Director Rossi to the podium? How are you?
Hi. Well.
Night's getting long in the tooth, so I'll be quick with the questions. We talked about this a little bit about the O&R meeting, so I'm just sort of re-asking a question, but I know we weren't televised each time. You opined previously, in a previous reiteration of this project and under a different administration, that this project was not right and that you wanted more of a plan. And this opinion has changed, and you explained this in O&R. But again, why this change in your opinion and beliefs about this project and not needing a further plan?
We have, as I had noted last week, Councilor Ringus, we have a new administration and a new policy in place now. As noted by some of the councilors this evening, this project and this PUD has been properly vetted with the appropriate professionals, including Mr. Seidman, who's here this evening, including myself, and also the planning board. It was reviewed comprehensively, just like we would review any other project. Unfortunately, that was not the situation last year.
And I ask this respectfully because it's something I think we need to address when we look at the charter, but you're a subject matter expert, and I trust you as a subject matter expert like I would trust the fire chief, who I'm going to call to the podium in a second, or the police chief. So your opinion, in essence, was influenced by a third party, or you're put in a position where your opinion was influenced because of your employment.
Correct.
Okay. We asked at the night of the last week, there was a 3-2 vote that previously denied this project. All the planning board members are still currently on the planning board, with the exception of Mr. Grove. I noticed that he's no longer the planning board. Did he resign prior to this?
Mr. Grove was replaced on the planning board.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And since he's been sitting here so patiently, I figured I would call Acting Chief Viola to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening. So you have seen the plans that have been sort of issued, and it's been opined by Mr. Seidman that they have conversations with you. Do you have any issues with access by the fire department if it's a project like this?
Currently, at this time, no. The fire marshal's office, in my office, also reviewed it.
And just to kind of continue on that, ladder trucks will be able to access from the reservoir side to a certain unit.
Yes, they're going to put in a that is basically strong gravel that the truck can get down. In our initial meetings, we had talked about that.
I would call the plaza just quickly to the podium. Mr. Fox. Again, I'll go through these quick because, again, you did answer many of them at the O&R, but I just wanted them officially on the record for our meeting tonight. You answered with a lot of candor, and I appreciate that last week. And when there were questions that you didn't have the answers to, you honestly answered that you didn't have that, and I appreciate that when someone can say they don't have the answer. But as we stand tonight, there is no true plan on paper that of a 10-year, 5-year, or even a 1-year plan for what the plaza wants to do. There is conjecture and hope, but no confirmed plan.
There is a 1-year plan, and I think you've seen it tonight, and that includes, the development of the residences at South Shore, as well as the redevelopment of the 99. That is the plan that we will be carrying out.
So with the exception of those, if approved, there is no other plan.
And I think I commented on it earlier, is that the next logical plan would be the redevelopment of the Lord and Taylor building. However, we do not control that building at the moment.
And that was just going to be my next question, following up from what you said last week. A lot of what you can or can't do on that property is contingent upon agreement or allowances of that by your major tenants, which would be the owners of the Lord and Taylor building, Macy's, Nordstrom, Sears, and Target.
That's correct, yes, the major tenants.
Okay, thank you. Then to ZOM, either through Attorney Marinelli or Mr. Dunlop. We talked in the O&R meetings, and it was brought up by certain residents tonight, that there is some distaste in even the Flaherty students being able to look from the Flaherty property, the softball fields, at the project. Obviously, there's been a berm and sort of some vegetation that'll be placed to sort of around the circle area. There was some light commitments, I'd say, from both ZOM and the plaza, that there would be the opportunity to sort of line trees along the fence line too, or at least some sort of vegetation. Is that still something that still would be on the books?
Yes, from my understanding at the Rules and Ordinance Committee meeting last Wednesday, we talked about thickening it with some lower vegetation. There's some mature trees in there. The berm is something that is on the concept plan, as most of the members know, and certainly the public that trusts that we're presenting honestly and with integrity and transparently throughout the whole process. We listened to a fiction built upon a fiction in a couple of speakers. just creating the high fear without any evidence whatsoever that there was going to be vehicular traffic from a resident or residents of the residences into Lakeside. That is not going to happen. It's in all of the applications. It's on the concept plan. So let's be clear. To state the opposite is a false narrative. And of course, we've heard false narratives throughout the process, that housing is arsenic, that less housing is less arsenic, that the planning board gave the middle finger to the, so I'm just saying that, you know, some of the comments have been difficult, but we have stuck with the facts, and we appreciate the board's attention. The berm is going to be a reality. It's on the plan. The thickening of an area that is off locus, that is Simon property, so I'm going to have to let Tim address that, but we would certainly participate in that. I think the last time we were here before Rules and Ordinance, he did say that they would cooperate with that.
Thank you, Frank. I would just reiterate our position that we would be improving that area as Frank had outlined.
Thank you. I think these next two might go directly to Mr. Dunlop, and then I will go to my comments. I think one of the things that I've heard from a bunch of emails I received was these meet and greets, which I think honestly are a great idea. There was some concern from certain residents that the first was held in the Highlands area, which is sort of the farthest point away from this. What was the rationale or the reasoning behind holding that away from the abutters as opposed to initially dealing with the abutters?
Yeah, there was no rationality to hold it away or close. I think we started with the process of working in the district with a council member who had a connection and offered to host a meeting. So East Braintree would have been that. Then we, started targeting. We have to have a place, right? We went to the Highlands. We did 2 at the site because North Braintree never really offered to have a meeting. So we had one, as close as we could, which was right on site. And then we did 2 at the veterans facility as just a central, which is North Braintree as well, I believe. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
That's it?
So I do have some comments regarding this proposal in a more sort of global fashion, but I'm going to offer my stance on the proposal. It hasn't changed much. My vote hasn't changed much since 3 hours ago. Back in 2022, I had prepared a bunch of remarks regarding the vote on marijuana and realized after the fact that I was a swing vote, and I made everyone listening to my remarks thinking I had a captive audience, and they were just waiting for the way that I was going to vote. So avoiding that tonight, I won't be supporting the proposal. With that said, don't clap. With that said, first off, I want to thank everyone who participated in the ordinance and rule hearings last week, as well as tonight's full council. This is an issue on which there are many opinions and many strong feelings. We have a passionate group on one side who believes Braintree can utilize revenues from this project to help us through a difficult budgetary period. And we have a second equally passionate group who believes the project is proposed to have a detrimental impact on a host of quality of life issues, and the town should be getting more guarantees from Simon Properties or the South Shore Plaza before a zoning change like this is passed. To residents, I always approach hearings like this with some trepidation, as I said earlier, especially given recent hearings on this matter, but I think everyone has handled themselves in a respectful manner to some degree at our O&R meetings and in public comment tonight, despite the strong differences of opinion on this proposed project. To the residents who have sent emails, called and offered thoughts, or pulled me aside at various events, I want to thank you for your opinions as well, which I factor into my decision. To Attorney Marinelli, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, as always, thank you for your professional and thorough presentation. I have a soapbox for just a second, and I know Charlie doesn't want me to talk too long, so I'm going to wrap it up as quick as I can, but I'm going to use it for a moment anyway. Over the past few months, there's been a lot of animosity and vitriol directed towards Attorney Marinelli online. In my personal opinion, and you can take it as you will, is that this is unfair, and it's a waste of energy best used elsewhere. As a member of the bar, Attorney Marinelli must zealously advocate on behalf of any client he takes, and anything else would be tantamount to malpractice. And although I understand the passion and emotion a project like this can invoke, Attorney Marinelli is doing his job, and again, in my opinion, to attack an individual doing that job is unwarranted. I see a variety of occupations as I look around the room, whether an accountant, a realtor, etc. A job's purpose is to offer your best performance and maximize the money one can realize from that job. And I just find it inappropriate that with so many comments directed at Attorney Marinelli. To Zom, especially Jim Dunlop, thank you for your comments and answers to the questions I posed by members of this board as well as the O&R subcommittee last week. Again, I'm jumping on that soapbox. Zom has also been the subject of various attacks via social media. And Zom, specifically Jim's, it's a private entity with a defined role. Develop properties, and as we live in a capitalist society, to maximize profits. To hold that against him or Zom just doesn't make any sense. The burden isn't on a private entity to limit themselves. The role falls to the community that our project is to be situated through its residents and the community's appointed and elected officials to put a hard limit on something. To the representatives from the plaza, specifically Tim Fox and Clay Hallman, I thank you for your attendance and answering questions last week and tonight in a thoughtful manner. As the chair of the O&R subcommittee, I was adamant about the plaza's attendance and approached this appearance initially, like I said earlier, in a manner that my questions might be met with a level of evasiveness, and instead I feel the plaza was honest to the question posed. Some of the answers were concerning to me, and I'll touch on that later in my comments, but nonetheless, I appreciate your ability and candor to say that you don't have an answer when it applied. To Director Santucci-Razzi for her subject matter expertise and answers to the questions posed by councilors, I thank you. I think we brought up tonight the fact that we trust Ms. Razzi, or I trust Ms. Razzi and other subject matter experts to be able to deliver an honest opinion to us. And I think we as a council have to look to the future to ensure that none of these subject matter experts are having their opinions swayed in any way by any administration. And I think there's ways that we can accomplish that. Also, thank you to members of O&R, who I didn't get to thank them earlier, for coming in prepared, and as always for the time commitment. It was important for the last week for me to allow public comment at these hearings and additionally have the ability to televise or stream the meetings. I think it was important to the public, and that meant we had to wait on these meetings until the election had passed so we could access this hall. So hence, we had to have 3 meetings in a week's time to meet the public hearing set for the full council meeting tonight, so I appreciate everyone's ability to adjust their schedules accordingly. We sit here tonight in a difficult situation. We have seen that our budget is in dire straits with federal COVID funds dried up, state monies lessened, and like every municipality, having only so many ways in which to create new revenues. This is amplified with inflation affecting every community just as it does our household budgets, contractual obligations, and unfortunately a multi-million-dollar settlement that is for an event that occurred when I was barely a toddler but now lands directly in Braintree's lap. And this situation isn't unique to Braintree. We only need to look at the number of Prop 2.5s that have been entertained over the last 9 months in various communities, and the ongoing teacher strikes in Marblehead, Gloucester, and Beverly. Development in this town is needed. Without new growth, without new revenues, our community will plateau, we will stagnate, and we'll die. For far too long, as many councilors have already said tonight, Braintree has been a community that has said no much too often. We have reached a point where we will need to say yes, even in some cases in years past where we might have viewed a particular project with some distaste. In recent weeks and months, I personally have been supportive of 2 proposed rezones. A project at the corner of Hawthorne Road and the former St. Thomas More site will bring townhouses to Braintree. Although there are concerns of traffic in that area, and in the past I might have had some pause, I recognize that multiple objectives could be met through this project. New revenues to the town, including taxes from a piece of property that had previously been exempt due to its use, 55+ housing, and the preservation of a woodland area. Similarly, in very recent weeks, I voted in favor of a zoning change proposed at the current site of Dalton Water. Again, due to this being located on a state-controlled roadway in a tough traffic area, in the past I might have had some pause, but again, I recognized increased revenues to the town, the removal of a non-conforming use, and what amounts to a refresh of a property that has been more commercial in nature. Additionally, although it did not have to come through the town council due to no zoning changes being needed, I have been supportive of apartments proposed on Hancock Street and a long vacant property across from Braintree Lumber. I would note that the latter 2 projects are both within a few hundred yards of my home, and despite the direct impact they'll have on me, my neighbors, I was still supported them. Development is needed and will come to the South Shore Plaza, it must. I mentioned in O&R as my role as a dad to a teenager and carpooling a group of teenage girls around to Derby Street and Legacy Place that none of them want to shop at the South Shore Plaza. The plaza needs to recapture these homegrown shoppers and can't do so without change. The plaza needs to emulate Derby, Legacy, Westwood, and Hanover Crossing to attract the stores that our youth shop in. With all that said, though, although we do need to say yes far more often, we do not need to say yes to every project, and we need to balance each project against its detriments and its benefits. Bottom line, for me, there's just too many unanswered questions, and in my opinion, only one time to get this right. In looking at Braintree, we're a zoning mess. We have non-conforming uses and split zone lots, something we need to fix through the proper use and execution of a master plan. I want the same at the Plaza property. I want Hanover Crossing, not a mix of various developers building different things. I want a cohesive piece of property that is truly an eat, play, live destination. As proposed, the ZOM development appears beautiful, and in looking at other ZOM projects, the ZOM does create wonderful developments. With this project, though, we don't realize many of the objectives that we have identified as important to our community. There is no 55-plus housing, there's no veterans housing. Additionally, and impactful to my decision, we have a development that's only true connection to the rest of the mall is a connection with the proposed new restaurant in the old 99 property. There appears to be just a gaping parking lot and no connection to the mall as a whole, which is really the focal point of Eat, Play, Live. This doesn't fall to ZOM, though, and respectfully, it falls to the Plaza. As I have said, I appreciate the candor and honest response of Simon's representatives. As stated, the Plaza has no plan for the property that can be defined. I can talk louder. A former mayor of this town had a saying that he echoed in school committee meetings when I first got into government: you plan the work and you work the plan. With no plan, we can't anticipate or predict the future. Although representatives state they hope to have continued development, respectfully, again, a former law professor of mine used to say an oral contract is worth the paper it's written on. We have no guarantees of what the Plaza property will look like in 10 years or 5 years. The Plaza reps indicated truthfully any changes require a vote of the major tenants, Macy's, Sears, Target, Nordstrom's. Furthermore, the Plaza notes they don't control a major piece of the property in the Lord and Taylor building. These provisions need to be addressed before any updates to the property as a whole can be addressed. These conversations should have occurred already so we could have some feelings on where possible negotiations stand. Specifically, the leaseholder of Lord and Taylor could hold up developments seeing a possible cash cow in any buyout or restructuring of its lease. We don't know that as we sit here tonight, though. We have seen a devaluation of the Plaza property in significant fashion over the years, partially due to what appears to be some neglect of the premises. The Plaza has seen certain shops vacate the Plaza and have not replaced those with comparable situations. As I stated, teens don't want to shop here from our town. It's safety and lack of viable options for the shop for the indicator of why. And again, respectfully, Plaza reps couldn't guarantee a plan at ONR to attract better shopping options. As stated, the position and sale of this parcel yields a cash windfall to the Plaza. The revenues the town will realize will come from ZOM, not from the Plaza. We have no true guarantee that this cash windfall will be reinvested in the property. While the reps here tonight have been truthful, they do not dictate the will of a national organization like Simon. With no plan, no guarantees, no promises of any sort, I can't be supportive of the project. Ultimately, this project may or may not pass tonight, but whatever the outcome, tomorrow we all have to come back together as a community. We need to move forward as one community and ensure that we continue to seek appropriate ways to implement a master plan, add new revenues through appropriate development, especially in the area of the former Armstrong property, and realize that debate, discussion, and discourse on these issues is necessary. No matter how my colleagues vote here tonight, everyone here is a leader, and making a tough decision, I look forward to continuing working through this body to realize new revenues and the ultimate betterment of our community. So thank you.
Any other councilors like to speak? Councilor Quilty?
Without reiterating what what the other councilors said, I would just like to express my support for this project.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Moran?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I'm getting too old for this stuff. I'm a little bit older than the mall. I believe this ordinance provides sufficient protection to the neighborhood from potential adverse impacts. Planning boards demonstrated the ability to impose appropriate conditions on projects to mitigate impacts and to protect neighborhoods, and I'm confident they'll do so in this project, should the ordinance be adopted. In the late 1950s, the town started advertising to attract commerce to the new crossroads that was created at the intersection of Route 3 and 128. In 1961, the plaza was built, replacing 3 farms that had previously existed there. In the ensuing 6 decades, there have been changes to the plaza. It was enclosed in the late 70s. A second floor was added in the 90s, and a new wing was added in 2010. The neighborhood around the mall has changed as well. From Campanelli ranches that were built in the 1950s and attracted my family to move to Worthington Circle, to what is now a mix of colonials, capes, and modern designed homes. Over the decades since the plaza opened, the houses in the neighborhood have increased in value at a similar pace to other neighborhoods in Braintree. Until recently, the mall value kept growing, even when we said no to development, and tax it at 175% rate, the highest rate we can possibly tax it, and we damn well should, absolutely should. But since 2020, the mall's value has decreased by $44 million, and the tax revenue it generates has also decreased by $1.4 million over the same period. In the entire time I was on the select board until I was chief of staff, from 1991 until 2015, the South Shore Plaza never filed an abatement on their taxes. They paid their bill that was issued by the town, but market forces had forced them to ask for an abatement recently. People don't shop the way they did 60 or 30 or even 10 years ago. Our zoning currently is behind the times. So the town now finds itself at a fiscal crossroads, and we can continue to say no to development and try to adjust to a new reality that would be less revenues and resources to address needs whose costs won't readily diminish. Teachers, police, firefighters, DPW workers are needed, and we need to be able to pay them. We can pass this proposal and produce revenue that we don't currently have. My primary reason for supporting the zoning change is to stop the decline in the value of the plaza. For the last 6 decades, it has been the economic cornerstone of this community, and it is now in danger of, it is in danger. The infusion of $140 million into an adjacent parcel will help enhance the value of the plaza. It will bring a customer base within walking distance, and the likelihood of new investment into the rest of the mall will be increased far more than if we once again say no. Since I was elected, I focused on making sure that we had adequate revenue, and I fought for the override. I've tried to fight and make sure that our expenditures were under control as well. And we're trying to get the town back on track. The fact that there are fewer commercial properties in this town is due in part to a change in the economy and a part to this town's attitude towards commercial development. It fails to recognize the potential positives that it can bring with proper regulation and oversight. We've got to change that attitude. I want to thank Councilor Ringus for the way that he conducted the O&R hearings. Every neighborhood has to be a part of this. Every neighborhood has been or will be facing new housing. It is going to be a reality, and no neighborhood can be exempt from it. I understand the concerns of the neighborhood. I understand that your home is your most important asset, and it's more than that, it's the center of your family life. It's vital to you, and it's part of who you are. It's part of your identity. I understand that. But I look at how the neighborhood has positively grown while the mall has had investment into it. Property values have constantly increased. I am also, from my own experience, drawing on my own experience of living near 2-bedroom apartments, complexes. If I look out my kitchen window through Mrs. Manning's backyard and Peter Schiavone's backyard, and I've got 3 apartment buildings with 48 units on less than an acre. Okay? I live about 100 yards away from him. I have for 30 years. I think they sent 2 kids to school in the time that my kids went to school. They don't overload the system. I don't have a vegetational berm. I don't have any, well, I have an oak tree in my backyard. And we've been able to live with that in my neighborhood for decades. I think this is something that is, I think that the ordinance will serve the town well. I think the planning board will do its job to get mitigation and to get additional benefits from the developer. We need to get the plaza back on its feet, or we have to change the way we run this town and cut a lot of services. And I don't think we're willing to do that. So I am voting in favor of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's almost 11:15. I've let every council has talked. We've had extensive discussion from the public. So at this time, I'm going to entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion and a
Second.
second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, is there a motion for order 24034?
So, Mr. President, I did say earlier that there was a slight discussion at O&R regarding an amendment that was
So
made.
I'm going to take the main motion, then I'm going to take the amendment, then we're going to vote on the amendment, then we're going to vote on the main motion as amended, if that's what happens. So is there a motion on order 24034?
For purposes of the vote, I'll make the motion to approve order 24034 as submitted with planning board recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we have an amendment to the main motion?
If Council Moran doesn't mind, I can make it. I'll make it. This was discussed at O&R. I move to amend proposed zoning ordinance 135-617 by amending section D, table 1, use hotel or motel, by deleting the word yes in the by right column and replacing it with the word no, and by further deleting the word no in the special permit column and replacing it with the word yes.
Do we have a second on the amendment?
Second.
Council Moran, you want to maybe discuss why you're making this amendment?
Yes, I'm making the amendment basically to, because the intent of this project, I believe, is to create housing that complements existing commercial property. I believe that having a hotel on top of residential use, or in addition to a residential use as a right of use, would be overly burdensome on the property. I've spoken to and Attorney Marinelli, and there is no objection from him as to this amendment. I think it enhances the protections of the ordinance.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
Just as I mentioned at the O&R meeting, President Ryan, just for folks in the audience, folks watching at home, there's going to be 2 votes now. The first vote will be just as to the amendment, then we'll have a vote on the main motion.
I can handle that. Yep, okay. All right, is there any further discussion on the amendment? All right, hearing no further discussion on the amendment, let's take a vote on the amendment. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Now we're going to vote on the main motion as amended, all right? We're going to do a roll call vote on this. Can I have the clerk of the council do a roll call, please?
Council Verica?
Yes.
Council Flaherty?
No.
Council Hume?
Aye.
Council Maglio?
Aye.
Council Moran?
Aye.
Council Quilty?
Aye.
Council Reynolds?
Aye.
Council Ringus?
No.
Council Ryan?
Aye. So with the count of 7-2, the main motion as amended is passed. Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is new business. Everybody should have received 03024. Everyone should have received the 2025 council meeting calendar. So I'd ask everybody to take a look at it, and if anybody has any comments or questions or conflicts and wants to change anything or add anything, please speak to Sue Semino before the next meeting, because we're going to finalize it at our next meeting on December 3rd. Do we have a motion to refer all the outstanding matters to committees?
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. I'd like to just say that our next meeting is going to be on Tuesday, December 3rd 2024 at 7:30. I'd like to thank our friends Jerry and Bill from BCAM for broadcasting the meeting tonight, and I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. We're now adjourned.